Thank you, everyone, for joining with us today. I would now like to call to order our special council meeting. Counselor, stop talking. Our special council meeting for budget deliberations to order, please. I do wish to begin tonight's meeting by recognizing that the District of Sauk is situated on the traditional territories of both the Sauk and Sianu nations. So it would appear to me that we do not have any members of the public currently in council chambers with us. We do have members of council here, minus Councillor McMath. But what I thought may be useful for those members of the public viewing this meeting online, as well as to the benefit of members of council, if perhaps our CAO could maybe just introduce the staff members that are here. I don't need you to pass around the microphone, but it just helps us connect names to faces and just so everyone knows who's today with us in the room.
For sure, of course, no problem. So today we have representatives from multiple departments here. I'll probably apologize in advance if I'm saying the last names wrong. We have Ryan Reich, our manager of IT, Jessica Bagnell, our director of corporate services, myself, Rachel Gray, interim CAO and director of financial services, Ted Ryder, fire chief, Greg Wilcox, staff sergeant. In the back, we have Wayne Kennedy, deputy chief, Ben Curry, deputy director of finance, Paul Bohemier, our manager of wastewater. Tommy Barnes is back there, our corporate services assistant, taking minutes. We have Emma Taylor, our manager of parks, and Raphael Matson, our manager of engineering. And as well, viewing, I believe not presenting, is Catherine Holder, our manager of HR, and Christina Mogg, our communications coordinator.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, and to all of you for being with us tonight. Okay, so council, I'll look for you to please look at item number 3, which is approval of tonight's agenda. It says moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre that the agenda for the March 13th, 2024 special meeting of council be adopted as circulated. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimous. Thank you. Item 4 is public question and comment period. So as we have no members of the public present, we'll move on to item 5, which would be a resolve into committee of the whole. So that is that council resolve into committee of the whole to consider information related to the district's 5-year financial plan. Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And that moves us into item 6, which is our report section. Council, now that we are sitting as committee of the whole, any motions require just one mover, no seconder for the motion. And we will resolve back out afterwards. And I just ask that you read out the motion so that those viewing online, it'll just allow for the transcribing for anyone that would need that. Okay, thank you. Over to staff, please.
Okay, thank you. Just to introduce the full night before I dive into the first presentation here, we have a few parts. I'm going to start with the continued budget deliberations from our meeting on February 28th. So we've taken some direction from that meeting and have presented a new proposed budget. I'm going to start with summarizing some of those changes. And that'll be followed by a service level review where we have staff will present their departments with the overall service level review and include some highlights of capital and some other key priorities that they'll be doing for 2024. So to dive right in, I'm going to start with just a continuation of the budget deliberations right now. So my first slide here. Okay, go back one more. Thanks. So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is first just what we had heard from the last meeting, a summary of the 2024 operating budget request. Then we're going to look at the proposed changes and how we reached the new budget before you today. A review of the police cost reserves, a review of the COVID-19 safe restart reserve as the scenarios for consideration for different tax increases, and then the estimated impact for residents or for properties based on those scenarios. So what we heard on February 28th per the committee's direction, we heard that staff provide a budget scenario with the property increase less than 10%. We also had heard direction that the Amberg Academy of Arts and the Souk Harmony project in the amount of $7,000 per organization be included with the budget. And also we've added $15,000 increase for Souk Family Resources. This is based on the decision from the March 11th meeting. We've already had $30,000 in budget for Souk Family Resources as a carry forward from their previous years funded. It was allocated in budget. So this increase of 15,000 covers the increase that was approved recently. Some proposed changes that we've included in budget include we've done a reduction of fire operation adjustments. This is in $27,000 and $27,600. This is a reduction of essentially just some operational increases, which will risk manage. So we remove those to reduce the ask by 27,000. Some admin operating adjustments. So we reduced, I believe was some hours for some part-time auxiliary hours for staff support in a general clerical capacity. And also, I believe we reduced some of the procurement consulting ask that we had by $10,000. Some line painting removed from the operating budget. So this $50,000 reduced the ask by moving the $50,000 for line painting from operating to capital. So we'll still be doing the line painting in 2024. This will become a capital item. So that just made some more room to reduce the tax burden. And then last here is the 2024 QP CPI adjustment for $60,000, which we removed. And if it was approved later this year, it would be risk managed through vacancies that we would have surplus in a small surplus in some of the vacancies in salaries. So another way that we've reached this 9.98% tax increase is by using additional funds from the COVID Restart Fund. This is $117,000 more in funds from the COVID Restart Funds to for us to provide the essential services. And an additional 100,000 from the police reserve. So we originally were planning to offset the police reserve with I believe 125,000, and that increases now to 225,000. So it just reduces the tax burden for this year. Gonna go a little further into both those funds a little bit later on. So this slide here is just the property tax increase offsets. So this shows the increase to the COVID reserve and the increase to the police reserve to help us reach the goal of the 9.98%. No other revenue changes were included. This next slide is the non-discretionary expense changes. These were presented at February 28th. The amount remains the same at the 1.9 million. And this next slide here, this shows the discretionary expense changes. So the original request was for 549,000. So we've added the new service agreements. We've added the 15,000 for Souk Family Resources. We've reduced the admin operation adjustments, and we've also reduced the ask by the 50,000 for the line painting. So the COVID Restart Reserve, this is the fund. The status of the fund and our projected balance at the end of 2024. So the number there, the 843,000 is what we would project to be available for Lot A should this budget be supported. So we're proposing 304,000 from the COVID Restart Fund for operations. There's 250,000 proposed from admin projects for capital, another 80,000 for parks capital, and the Souk Family Resource Agreement for 45,000. To be funded fully from COVID. This next slide here includes the proposed expenses to be funded from COVID Restart Funds. So it's 304,000 is the is made up of the emergency operations. So that's continued from previous years that we funded a part of our EOC budget from COVID restart funds. Souk Family Resources, the new auxiliary bylaw position I'm proposing to fund from COVID restart funds. Food bank, so this would be moving the food bank service agreement to be funded from the COVID restart funds. Souk Shelter, Amber Academy, Souk Harmony Project, and Souk Regional Community Health Initiative. So the Souk Community Regional Health Initiative and the Souk Shelter had been previously approved to be funded by the COVID Restart Fund. This next slide here, apologize that the font's a little bit small here. The future policing cost reserve. So beginning year balance for January 2023 is 361,000. We have a budgeted transfer to reserve. So we budget 85,000 to go into the reserve, less the offset for police costs last year. So 2023, we budgeted $250,000 to offset the police costs, just to lessen the tax burden. And with an ending result, estimated balance at the end of December for 196,000. So including the $85,000 budgeted to transfer for 2024, we would have $281,000 available in the police reserve. So to achieve the 9.98% tax increase, we would require 225,000 of the police reserve funds for 2024. So this is the property tax increase impact. So if we, with the 9.98% property tax increase, the impact per household would be $11.63 per month, or $139 per year. For consideration, I'd like to just request or propose that the committee consider potentially adding back a few items to go above the 9.98% that was originally requested. And if there was a chance at adding some items, I would request that we add the $100,000, reduce the request from like using the police reserve by $100,000, which would add 0.9% of a tax increase. And the other item is the QP CPI adjustment for $60,000 or 0.6 of a tax increase. These are both items that would be required to be funded in 2025. So essentially we'd be playing catch up in 2025 before the year has already started, where we'd have to get this increase back. And then we'd also be looking at the CPI adjustments at that time as well. So this would just put us a little bit more ahead. We've been balancing this budget each year, playing catch up. And this would give us one step forward. So the 11.48% property tax increase would cost the average home $13.30 per month, or $159 a year. So that's an increase of $20 a year from the 9.98% tax increase. So what's next for the budget process? Tonight, we're reviewing the service levels along with the capital project presentations. We're looking for council to provide some direction into us presenting the bylaw back for first three readings. So we'd like you to hear the service levels and capital presented tonight, provide some further direction, and request that we return with first three readings of the bylaw at the tax rate that you see feasible. Next, we'll be looking at a community budget open house. We're looking at that for the first week of April. And following that, at one of the next council meetings, we'd be looking for fourth reading and budget adoption for the 5-year financial plan. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just curious about the SPA funding, and maybe Councillor Legesse might know. I was curious as whether that money could be used for Amber Academy and the Harmony Project, whether it falls under that particular rubric. Go ahead.
Through your worship, I believe it's only for arts
Installation.
projects. I can pull up the bylaw in a second, or the reserve fund bylaw in
Just
a
curious,
second here. I
they're
don't know.
they're
off the
looking
top
for
of my head.
long-term funding, I think, and I was curious as whether arts funding would be for arts.
If I remember correctly, it's for art installations.
Go ahead, Counselor Bateman.
So thanks, Ben, for that. And two questions. So the police reserve would be down to what, $60,000? If you take 200,000 out.
That's correct. And that doesn't include any surplus, potential surplus from 2024. So if they're running less staff than the approved amount, then we could see a surplus again. But that doesn't include the amount we could get because it's unknown at this point.
Right. And it's unlikely to be a surplus this year because I believe the staff sergeant's seeking a full complement. Get it up to 14 officers.
I believe that's his goal. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and the other question related to, the Amber Academy, and so you're gonna put it and the Harmony Project into the COVID Relief Fund, but I'm looking at the guidelines for that. I don't see how that fits. Are these defined as vulnerable persons, services for vulnerable persons? Or do you have it under addressing revenue shortfalls?
I think addressing revenue shortfalls is where I would categorize it.
Okay, good, thanks.
Would it not also fit the definition of vulnerable though, when it's providing, like, meeting the needs of children and accessing? But I'll leave it there.
There is another related cost category as well that could be open to interpretation. It's very low dollar, so we're just considering a low risk. And if I may, I do have the SPA answer. So per the bylaw, the SPA money must only be used for the purpose of public art projects approved by council. That's the eligible uses of funds of the SPA reserve.
So the other point around that COVID fund is that you're cutting it in half this year effectively. And if we use it again next year, that's the end of it, right? In this fashion.
That's correct. Depending on what was required for Lot A at this time. So
Right.
the way that I had set up the capital plan was to fund the remainder amount of the COVID restart funds to Lot A if it was needed. So that would be a line item in capital.
This is a rainy day fund that's rapidly running out effectively.
That's correct.
And just to add to that as well, we did receive letters from the province indicating COVID funds should be spent. Right, they're not supposed to hang on forever. The COVID fund was a limited time fund, and so they are encouraging municipalities to spend the funds because we do need to report them on our annual financial statements as well. So there is an ask to ensure we're not hanging on to this for years and years and years. So.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, this is probably obvious, but I want to put it on the record right now. You say you can deliver us a 9.98 if we bump some things down the road till next year. But realistically, you're looking at 11.48 increase. Is that how I summarize it?
Yeah, that's correct. We can do the 9.98. It just means we are pushing those out to next year to find the funding for it.
Yeah, okay. And so 11.48 is with your clawback. That's one of our options, correct? Okay, thank you.
Are there questions from members of council? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. So just a question in general, what if we shifted the 100K from the COVID relief fund to the police reserve? Like, just put that over there, we would drop that from 881 balance to 781. As our CAO just said, we have to get rid of it anyways. So would that, I know it's delaying, but it would reduce this year's tax increase.
Yes, it's absolutely possible if the committee and council wish to do so.
Yeah. Okay, it's just a thought, so. Might be a better place to take that out of, as opposed to depleting the police reserve fund, deplete our COVID restart fund. Just my thought anyways. Thank you. Good presentation. Thanks.
So we're actually able to do that.
Yeah, they're vulnerable. It's vulnerable.
Point, I'm confused. Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
I thought that the COVID money had some specific reasons it could be used for, and I don't think the police budget would be one of them, would it? I don't know, I'm asking the question, I'm not sure, that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking.
So for the COVID restart fund, per the bylaw and the directions provided from the province, we are allowed to use it for addressing revenue shortfalls, facility reopening and response costs, emergency planning and response costs, bylaw enforcement and protective services such as fire and police, computer and other electronic technology costs, vulnerable people or services for vulnerable persons, and other related costs. So it could apply in there. It's, you know, that's why we're presenting it as options. It could be used, and then just other funding sources would need to be found at some point for Lot A, Plaza.
Good, thank you for that clarification.
Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, no, and that was, when I read the uses in the there, I thought, well, maybe it'd be better off, more beneficial to us to keep our police reserve fund up and start depleting this COVID restart. It was just my thought. I'll be interested in what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Well, that's a good point. I'll just share that today in the UBCM newsletter that went out, there was an update from the local government RCMP Contract Management Committee. And one piece that was shared within here was in regard to the collective bargaining, and that a planning rate still stands. However, local governments may wish to consider putting aside additional funds in the event that the final sentiment is greater than the planning rate. And there will be some retroactive pay associated with the second collective agreement, given that the last one was signed almost a year ago. So it does make sense to keep that budget as whole as possible. Okay, so at this point, given that we're in committee of the whole, we usually receive public input after various items. Would this be an appropriate time on this particular item, or do we wait for the whole? Because then there's going to be more slides with departmental pieces. So maybe it would be better just to seek any public input on this section and we do it section by section. Is that reasonable for council members? Okay, so just to the member of the public that has joined us tonight, thank you for joining with us. So this is an opportunity if you wish to comment on what we have received thus far. Or you could also, if there's nothing, that's fine, but we'll also look to incorporate public input as we receive the departmental updates. Would you like to comment now on anything? Okay. All right, just checking in. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along, please.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just pass the mic over to Staff Sergeant Wilcox here, and he's gonna present the service levels for the RCMP.
Thank you very much, Ben. Mayor Tate, members of council, thank you again for having me appear in before you for this budget meeting for 2024. I'm not going to talk too much. Some of these, I'm going to be presenting a couple different graphs and charts and whatnot, and some of these numbers you've seen before, but it's a bit of a reminder because there was such a there was a significant contribution made at the last budget for the next 3 years for an increase in police services. So we're going to go over that, and we're going to go a few other things, but essentially the topics are going to be, our service area overview, some key stats, budgetary notes, 2024 budget forecast, and a future forecast as well. So a very brief one, I might add. So for the service area, we have at the detachment, we have 14 funded municipal police officer positions. Last year, you may remember, we only had 4 provincial positions. Now we have 6, so we were allotted some more. Now this is for outside of the community. However, as I said in previous council meetings, this is really a net benefit for everybody. There's still 2 more police officers that are extra that are on the road, and they can serve the community. So all these positions that we have right now is uniform positions. So as council knows, our city is growing and our detachment's growing, especially with the 5 additional municipal officers that have been approved over the next 3 years until 2026. So as of today, our officer split is 70% municipal and 30% provincial. However, the policing cost, because we're a municipality, as council knows, over 15,000 people, it is 90/10. So right now it's serviced a little bit more by the provincial side. As the detachment commander for Souk, I will always try and find any cost efficiencies and cost savings for the municipality and push those positions over to the provincial positions, and I'll run vacancies on the municipal side. Currently, right now, I'm running vacancies on the municipal side. This is something that we've done previously and with other commanders as well, and we will continue to do. However, my goal is to always get to, as Councillor Bateman said, my goal is always to get to fully staffed. Now, there's reasons why we can't get to that. Policing is a very stressful job. It's a very hard job. Injuries happen, whether the physical injuries or mental health injuries. And in those cases, those officers, if they need time away from work, they're put on a medical collator, and those costs aren't billed back to the municipality. They're actually billed to the province because that officer isn't providing that service because they're not able to. They need to get better. And with any new officers that we have, obviously.
Sorry. Still chainsaw things came up all of that.
It's okay. So, and if we have any recruits, there's obviously going to be a slippage amount there too, because they're not making full salary, and that gets back. Now we that comes in forms of a surplus, or we can use that to fund different projects that we have, enforcement projects, or we can purchase equipment or whatever it may be. So on the next slide, this is just a quick snapshot of last year's detachment priorities for the detachment. And as everybody recalls, we were here Monday discussing it, and there's some wonderful suggestions. So I really appreciate that. Those new suggestions are going to be included in our next annual performance plan. If we go to the next slide, so this is the population trends in Souk. These numbers are based off of a couple different things. And with these numbers, you can insert different inputs into the equation. This is the input that we chose to use. So from 2026 to 2021, Souk's population growth was approximately 14%. So we're using that as an average in this. The provincial average for the population growth in other municipalities is 7.6%, and the national average is 5.2%. So we know that Souk is growing a lot. That's one of the fastest growing communities in the province. So with this, what we did, we did a compounding rate of the population based off of the 3.5% compounded rate of population growth per year. So in 2021, the last census said we had 15,086. So in 2025, if that continues, again, different inputs can be used for this, but we're using the last census inputs just for consistency. And I drive around and I see the construction just like everybody else. So I think we can all agree that there's still significant growth here. So in 2025, the estimated population based off of that compounding growth is 17,311. And in 2029, we're just a shade below 20,000 and 19,865. So with growth like this, it's certainly something that we have to plan for, and something that council heard last year when we were talking about additional positions. So if we go to the next slide, and this is a familiar slide from last year when Constable or Sergeant Shaw came and delivered a budget report. This is 2022. So I think it was Councillor Pearson last council meeting talking about the good news stories and the wins that we have, and we should celebrate those. So this is the previous policing cost per capita in 2022 for any municipality over 15,000 people. Souk was quite low. This is just an area average, and it includes other municipal RCMP detachment, but also includes municipal as well. Now, Victoria is quite high, but it's a capital city, so it's typically those rate higher, but Souk was considerably below the area average, along with other municipalities. So in 2023, the detachment budget increased for 5 municipal officers, which addressed a lot of these concerns and addressed the growth that we have in the community. So if we go to the next slide. So this is a municipality 5-year budget for the RCMP, starting in 2023 and going into 2028. Now, the key thing to see about this is the 5 officers are spread out over 5 years until 2028. And in order to allow for this to happen, we're going to have the approved positions before. So actually all 5 officers are going to be here in 2026. But again, the key is for this, and for me as the commander and the budget holder, is to ensure that those vacancies still continue to be run off the municipal side. Now, over the last X amount of years, that has always happened. Now, my goal is to staff it as best I can and bring those people in. And there's lots of experienced officers that want to come to Souk, and we're fielding those calls right now. But at any rate, in order to meet the budgeting guidelines, it's going to be spread out over the 5-year period instead of the 3. So if we go to the next slide. So essentially, I've talked about this, but the only thing I'll add is for the 2024 budget, there's no additional budgetary items this year from the Souk RCMP. So the next slide. Thank you. So, and this is, again, just a bit of a reminder for the service benefits for the increase that has happened, because right now we're in the implementation of those increases, and that's going to affect the property tax burdens that are going to be put on the community. So the biggest thing that we have is, again, to celebrate a win, because this really is, Souk is growing and we're going to 24/7 policing. We will have 24/7 policing here. Now, when that happens, and I've mentioned this before, it's a bit of a fool's game to guess, because it's going to depend on when the people can physically transfer here and when people can sell their homes. So we have people that are attempting to sell their homes, but they went through the Christmas season. We all know it's not the best time to sell homes through the Christmas season, but we're coming into the spring season. So we should get some more movement. And we do have new officers that are coming as of next week. So we're already starting to see some of that inflow happen. Once I have all the positions filled, or the people here, then we can switch or flip the switch, and we can go to 24-hour policing. So some of the benefits that the community is going to see is, and this is by the end of 2026, is we're going to, for the first time ever in Souk, we're going to have the ability to target prolific offenders through a GIS unit or a major crime unit. That can target a wide variety of different offenders in the community, whether it's, people participating in the drug trade, or whether it's prolific property crime offenses or complex investigations, because now, especially with technology, investigations are getting a lot more complex, especially when you get into like the tech crime realm. Enhanced ability to investigate those serious offenses, increased traffic enforcement as well. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I reported last time I was in council a couple months ago in regards to the amount of impaired drivers that we're finding in the community. And that's something that we're still going to continue to target. Also with speed and distracted driving. So in short, there's going to be a better presence than what we had previously, because we have more people to do that. There's going to be more engagement with the community events, schools, outings, and that sort of thing. So we have a school that's going to be doing a tour of the detachment here pretty soon, and we hope to get to the schools as well. It's for us as members, a lot of us we're family members as well. We have kids, and schools is something that's very important to us. We don't have a dedicated school liaison position, but with the additional members, we can have a better presence in the school than what we had previously. This is a big thing too, recruitment and retention. For the community, they see the officers, they get to know them, they get to know who they are, they see them out in the community, they get to know their families, and they're here for a long time. I already have officers that have been here for a vast majority of their career. They're not going anywhere. But with these additional positions, you can come here as a recruit, you can work patrol, you can get promoted, you can work on a major crime unit, and then you can eventually become the detachment commander. You can spend your whole career here, and people want to come here. Why not? It's Souk. It's beautiful. So people want to come here, and we're fielding calls for that. And also officer safety and wellness. This job is dangerous. It absolutely can be. And we deal with a number of different things. And when we just have more police on the road, it allows my officers to be safe because there's more of them, and there's that appropriate backup. Also, the workload is taken off of them. It's a stressful job, and the workload's taken off of them, and they can focus on what they need to focus on, and it helps with their wellness. So Next slide, please. So this is some of these numbers may be similar, but I've expanded them a little bit because we were talking about the next 5 years for the budget plan. So like I said, in 2022, or previously that was said last year, in 2022, the cost per person in Sioux for police and service was $134. Now that was before the increase that happened in 2023. Now we'll notice on this slide that in 2023, it goes up to 185. And by 2028, it's $230. Now, obviously that's projected. There's different inputs that can happen. And I'm sure these numbers will change. But the key takeaway of this is because of the increase that's happening, we are getting more in line with the area average, which is $242 per person. But the provincial average is $284. When we were at 134, it was very challenging. But with the budget increase that we had last year and through the next number of years, we're seeing that number go more towards the area average. One thing I will say with that is that's the 2022 average. Obviously, I don't have numbers for the future, but it just kind of puts a good gauge of kind of where we are. Next slide, please. So this may be familiar from last year. This is a police to population ratio, or what's commonly known as cop to pop. So we started in 2021 for this particular graph because this is when the last census was, and this gives us the most accurate data. After that, I'm using a 3.5% compounded increase in the population like I did before, and the numbers that are approved. So you see in 2021, the area average was one police officer for about 900, and the provincial average is one police officer for 764. So in 2021, we were at one police officer for about 1,160. And in 2022, there wasn't really much change, and also in 2023. Now, with the infusion that happened, we're going to see a significant drop in that, which is going to absolutely increase the service level for the community. So in 2024, that drops by a full 1,000. So, and that's just with an extra 2 officers. Now we're still over 1,000, which is still high, but you'll notice this goes all the way down to 943 people per officer in the community. That's when we're going to have 19 approved positions, is by 2026. It's not going to be included into the budget until 2028, but those are on paper, the approved positions that we have. Now, after that, it starts to creep up again, but that's a number of years out. But by 2026, we're getting a lot closer to the area average. But again, that area average is from 2022, but it just provides a very good guide to kind of see that where we are. Now, with any police service, the level of service is always determined by the council and always determined by the community. You know, I can provide Cadillac service, you know, or I can provide 911 service, or I can provide something in the middle. And with the infusion of the new members, 2 very exciting things are happening. 24-hour policing, which the community wants, and they're going to have. And we're going to have the first time, like I said before, we're going to have the ability to actually have dedicated officers to target prolific offenders. And as I've publicly mentioned before, I believe that there's a very few amount of people that are causing the most amount of crime and grief in the community. And if we target them, that's an effective use of our resources going forward. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. And again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate coming in front of you today.
Thank you very much for being here with us today and your ongoing regular updates. I have a question, a bit of a comment, and it's sort of mixed into the service planning discussion that we had, and I forgot to raise it at that time, but a telephone call that I had yesterday reminded me of this. What happened yesterday on the landline in our house, which was my father's phone number, was somebody phoning claiming that my father had promised to give them something, and they note that he had passed away, and they wanted access to retrieve this so-called treasure. So I know that that is false. I also know that after my mother passed away, it happened with people showing up at my father's house and wanting inside because they were friends, and he told them to go away. I gave them, I said, oh, he lives on Church Road. Yes, he does. And I said, yep, he is at 2076 Church Road. I'm sure he would be happy to meet you there. And of course, that is the address for the detachment. But cyber, all of this, there is a target to seniors and elders in our community. I know that the banks are stepping in to help catch some of these things. So just in terms of as we go forward with the community work that we're doing, in some ways, if you can find ways to provide some education or find a way to engage maybe through the age-friendly community or through Search or others, just on workshops on how seniors can keep themselves safe, the types of calls that are continually out there, and things they can do to protect themselves and their assets, I think would be very, in addition, like to the work that's happening in schools, we also have another population where, and many, and I've heard from different people, when it happens, many don't think to report it as a crime out of embarrassment or whatever, and they're dealing with the loss. And it's so sophisticated now with how that's moving. I think that would just be helpful to say that, yeah, this is happening and here's what you need to do. But in terms of so that's just sort of an aside, but otherwise, I just really pleased to see this. Thank you for all the data and the work that you're doing. I'm really relieved to hear of the interest from members who want to relocate here and to serve their career here. That's awesome and excellent. And so I really don't have any questions. I just really appreciate the presentation and all the work that you're doing. Okay, members of council. Oh, okay.
Before you go, I'll echo that. And it's so good to see these sort of an annually updated template you've got here. And you can continue to at these service reviews. Yeah, so thank you.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, just one comment, and this is about education as well for pedestrian education, because I think it seems to me that over the years, pedestrians have gotten stupider, for lack of a better term. It's like people
Maybe distracted would be more.
Well, I
appropriate.
think people assume that because you're driving a car, if you hit them, it's your fault. And it's, well, yeah, but you're severely injured and I have PTSD now. So people think that there's kind of an invisible force field if they step into a crosswalk in front of a car. And I think when I was a kid in school, RCMP officers came and trained us about pedestrian and bicycle safety, and I don't know if that's something that's happening now, and if not, if it could be, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for that. In terms of kind of the general education, because there's certainly a theme in regards specifically for the schools, like that would be the best resource for that would be an actual school liaison officer. And I'm very familiar with the program, and it's a wonderful program. And the school district 62 has been very supportive of police in the community, or sorry, police in the schools. So that's something that we need to get better at being in the schools. And simply the reason why, one of the main reasons why we can do that before is because all of our resources were dedicated to 911 response, because we do get a lot of calls for service. I just ran the numbers for today, and we're approximately 10% more calls for service than we did year to date last year. I think I mentioned at the last council meeting. So it's just because, again, common theme, growing community. So that's something that we would like to be better in this year. And it's something that we're, could potentially be in the APP for tracking as well. And then something I can report back to council, because those are good positive interactions with the youth. The youth also want us to play dodgeball with them and basketball and, do all those things. And most officers, if not all of them in my detachment, have done those in the past. It's just the last couple of years, they've been just strictly dealing with 911 calls, but we're going to have a better opportunity for that. And in regards generally just for the cybercrime component that you mentioned, Your Worship, they're getting incredibly sophisticated, incredibly, and I have to look at them very, very closely. I've been a police officer for 17 years, and I check the email address and I check the fonts at the bottom and that sort of thing. And even sometimes I don't know. And if I don't know, how is somebody in the member of the public going to know? But it's always, my advice is to always be very suspicious when you get those things. And it's something, if people report those more, and I always encourage people to report those to the police, if we're getting an influx, especially if the same type of scam, say, for example, it's a CRA scam, or, during tax season, or perhaps it's like an Amazon delivery scam, or whatever it may be, if we're seeing a lot of those in the community, it means our community is being targeted. So the more people that report that to us, the more information we have, and then we can do a public notice so that other people will realize that something like that's happened. So I just encourage everybody to always report it. So.
Counselor St. Pierre?
Thank you for mentioning that, because I have to be honest, just this week, I probably had like half a dozen that I ignore, as a part of daily living. Do you have enough staff capacity to handle what would probably amount to, 15,000 times 6 calls per day worth of complaints about this? Or do you have an app or a website that can actually collect the data? Is there some way that, honestly, I just don't even know if you could deal with it if you received all this stuff. So I'm gonna put it to you there.
No, that's a good question. Thank you for that. So there is the Canada Anti-Fraud Center that they deal with these things a lot, and they have a lot of resources, but a lot of their resources also in education as well, because we all know somebody that's been scammed. Everybody has known somebody that's been scammed. So for us, at the end of the day, it's fraud, and some of these files, especially if they're nationally, we're certainly able to investigate them. The problem is if they're overseas, then we have a harder time. And what we do then is we try and work with prevention for those people, because some people are scammed out of their life savings. Some people, it may potentially they lose their credit card number, which is also awful. But some people, they just give all their savings to these scammers. And if we catch it quick enough, we can potentially work with the bank to have these things stop. But I'll also say the banks are very good, especially with Visa, MasterCard, and that sort of thing. They will put stop payments on things, especially if they deem it suspicious. We've probably had it all where maybe we've gone out of country and we tried to use our credit card, and the credit card company sees that, oh, it's a transaction that's happening in a foreign country or whatever it may be, and they'll actually put a freeze on your credit card until you call them. So they're pretty good about that. But I do, if we have, it's 15,000 times 6, 90,000 calls for service when it comes to that. No, we do not have the capacity for that, but I know that everybody is not going to call, and I know it's very underreported, but I do encourage people to still call.
Thank you for that. Counselor Bateman, and then we need to start.
And Dana will follow me, but I just wanted to come back to this cost per capita. And you've identified by 2028 will be up to 230. The 2022 average is 242. Policing costs, I think, are going up across the South Island, with the possible exception of Victoria. Is that right?
Generally, it's very right. And it's just an input that I don't have.
Well, exactly. But we can anticipate that 242 growing quite considerably.
Yes. And it's not
under the average.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's not something that I mentioned because it's an unknown, and it will go up because at the end of the day, there's a certain cost of inflation, and there's also what I like to call judicial inflation, where it takes us longer to do the same job than it did maybe 10 years ago, or do the same investigation that it did 10 years ago. And that's just because of legislative changes and court rulings and stuff that nobody has any control over. So that I imagine that will go up just with basic costs, such as like vehicles are more expensive. There's a collective bargaining agreement for the RCMP that's happening. And everything just goes up in cost, as everybody knows. So.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just one more thing, just on the topic of scamming, and with AI technology now, it's really easy to duplicate someone's voice. And a tip that I heard was that if a family member calls you asking for money for some emergency or something, tell them you don't have time to talk right now, but I'll call you back in 2 minutes, and then call their number, and then you're speaking to the actual person. So I thought that was a good tip.
It was interesting. I got a call from a reporter last week asking why my phone number was no longer on the district website. He's talking about how to access local elected. And I said, well, this is and I went and got my district phone just to see how many scam texts I had received on it recently. I'm like, because I have to filter through all of that. And it's so, because everything's crawling the internet all the time. So the phone number for the district, anyway, I'll move on, but it's just how, it's like I just delete them all the time because of the volume. And then thankfully our staff has taken the number off the website, so I don't have as many. Okay, so thank you. I'll just open it up to member of the public if you have any questions about the policing presentation.
Nobody cares. So I have one question. When you said per person, 220 per person, that's per person, man, woman, and child, right? The population, the cost for policing. So a household of four would be $860 policing per year, correct?
Yeah, so this particular formula is based off of per citizen in the municipality of Sioux.
Right. Okay. Another question I had is the percentage of non-law abiding people versus percentage of law abiding. I know the percentage of law abiding is far exceeds, but you have repeat offenders as well. So do you have a percentage of offenders like in society?
Yeah,
in
so
community?
I think you're referring to how many prolific offenders or the percentage
Right.
of prolific offenders we have. It's no, because the definition of it could be very wide. Is a prolific offender somebody that's committed 100 crimes? Are they somebody that's committed 50? Or there's somebody committed plural 2? So, and also, is it somebody that potentially maybe they've committed a property offense and then they've committed a say a violent offense such as assault, or does it have to be just one category? So there's a lot of ways to do it. So we identify, so what we do to get around that problem is we identify certain individuals in the community because we deal with this, this is our job, and we deal with this quite often, and we know who is causing the issues in the community because we deal with them all the time, or we get lots of reports about somebody. So at any rate, once we've identified them, then if we know, for example, say they're a prolific property crime offender, so we develop strategies in order to deal with them, or say if they're a drug trafficker, we develop strategies in order to deal with them. So,
Right. So for 1,000 people, like you have one officer for per 1,000, that might actually just be for 10 regular offenders.
well,
I know you're there to protect everybody, but I'm just trying to.
no,
find
for
out.
sure. For example, like the Sioux detachment, we receive, I think last year is around 5,500, 6,000 calls for service. And this is for a variety of different things. It could be somebody that's been scammed online. It could be somebody that's seen a suspicious person. It could be a car accident victim. It could be somebody that, reported a drunk driver. It could be a variety of different things. So all the police officers aren't just dedicated for prolific offenders, but
Right.
that is our job. So with the new officers that are coming, what my comment is we'll have a better opportunity to target those prolific offenders.
Right. And one other question with repeat offenders, with the laws the way they are, can you actually deal with the repeat offenders if they're violent offenders? Or do you have to let them out?
No, so there's different processes that we have. We don't control who gets let out on bail. But for example, let's take somebody who's shoplifting. So we have somebody that, hypothetically they shoplift every single day. They go to the same store, they shoplift, and the store never calls us. That crime continues to happen. However, if they call us, they got on security video, for example, they call us, we're like, that's John Smith. So that's a hypothetical name. Sorry if anybody's named John Smith. But so we go and find this individual and we arrest them, and we can put them on conditions through an undertaking not to go back to that store. So if they go back to that store, for example, they don't even have to steal anything. We can arrest them for breaching their undertaking, and that's the maximum penalty. Not saying that they're going to get this, but the maximum penalty is 2 years in jail. So it's a significant criminal charge. So absolutely, we can stop people from doing it. We just need people to call us.
Right. And one of the stores that I was in there, they were talking about that exactly, shoplifting. They said they don't call the police because the police won't come.
100% all the time we will come.
I said that, but they seemed to believe that they would not come. So anyway, it's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on, please. Are you departing, Mr. or Staff Sergeant?
Yes, if that's all right with you.
Of
Your
course. Yes, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you
today.
again for your time.
Part of the retention and recruitment plan.
If you don't want me to just go through them, I can just go through all this.
No, you can, I'll tell you, it's all good. One less toy. Yeah. Okay. All right, you ready? Okay. Good evening, Mayor Tate and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to present. I think what you'll see, now that Staff Sergeant Wilcox is gone, is there's going to be some similarities in what we're talking about. Some of the key things, as he suggested, are, growth of our community. We're looking at moving forward with some public education and prevention opportunities. Obviously, with your support, we've moved on to 24-hour coverage. So we'll be talking about some of these things. But first slide, please. That is not the first. No, hang on, go back, please. Sorry. It's just, no. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, somebody's changed the picture on me. It's okay, it's all good. All right, so sorry about that. Yeah, it's all good. So as you look at this slide, you can see it's broken into two categories. One of them is operational, the other one's capital. In regards to the operational, as I mentioned at the onset, we have achieved 24-hour coverage, and that was in 2023 with your support. This year, we'll be adding 2 more firefighters based on your support for continued depth and growth as we continue to build our department. We're also looking at, we're almost through the process of putting in place a fire inspector / life safety educator, which would be funded through our UBCM grant. It also fills the void that we currently have in regards to our Fire Smart coordinator who left for another opportunity. So we're taking advantage of this grant money to sort of capture a few more pieces of what we do in our service. So one of them being Fire Smart, obviously, the Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan, as well as public education and prevention, and aligning with the changes that will be coming forward in the Fire Safety Act in regards to a routine system of inspections. So it's an important role, and we're hopefully going to land somebody there in the next couple of weeks. The staffing asks that we talk about and we refer to are obviously in alignment with our fire master plan, which you folks have seen, and you saw the presentation by Mitchell and Associates. It's no secret that we've fallen a little bit behind in keeping up with our growth, and that's fine. But what we're trying to do proactively is to try and keep up with our growth and offer a sustainable service. I've already talked about the fire prevention piece. And then if we look at the capital, we're hoping to take delivery of a new squad unit for us that aligns with our new response model, which again was talked about in the fire master plan. So our response model, just to refresh your memory, was an initial attack. So this apparatus we're receiving is called an initial attack apparatus, and it allows us to get out of the hall in good time with 2 staff to get on scene to start doing size up and sort of determining what strategies we need to take to be successful in our response. And then, as you are aware, our paid on call backfill the response and provide support. So as we continue to grow, the idea is to continue adding to our career complement as well as using our paid on call support. Next slide, please. So the topics we'll look at today are listed there in front of you. And basically, this is just a service area overview. And some of the things we're trying to achieve are listed there. So obviously, timely incident response is very important. And we're starting to get better at that due to the fact that we are now 24 hours. Obviously, we want to protect our community assets. I spoke previously about having somebody dedicated to the role of public education and fire prevention. We're moving forward, as you're aware, with our emergency program, and we have an emergency program manager that's doing some great work. Again, routine inspections are going to become mandatory, so we're hoping to align with that. Plan review is something that we do day to day. We work with the planning and the building department downstairs and spend a lot of time looking at plans and making sure that they align with access points, roads, fire hydrant placement, fire department connections, and those sorts of things we need to be successful in our responses. As I said, the Fire Smart coordinator will be filled once we hire this fire prevention inspector.
And then we can start to continue doing the good work that was done in regards to Fire Smart, as well as implementing some of the recommendations from our community wildfire resiliency plan. And ongoing, as you are aware, is the continued implementation of the fire master plan, which I sort of call a roadmap to our future. And it's a solid plan, and we will reference it quite a bit. Next slide, please. So this slide here, I think you've probably seen before. It's basically our organizational chart. It's pretty much self-explanatory. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to ask. But what we're doing as we grow is we're filling voids and gaps with the hope of providing a better level of service. And as Chief Kennedy and I look at things operationally, my role is going to be changing a little bit more to the administrative side of the fire service, and his role will be more operationally. So it just gives you a better understanding of our reporting structure, as well as some of the roles we will undertake. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a sort of a glimpse in regards to the budget. It has the number of our budget there, the fact that we are 24/7. By the end of this year, we will have 15 career staff. We currently sit at around 25 paid on call firefighters. This year, or sorry, 2023, our call volume has increased by 20%. So we did 1,286 calls in 2023. And then based on the fact that we have 24/7 coverage now, our response times are lowering. And you can see there, that's just an average of what our response times are from receipt of call to being on scene. In regards to the paid on call staff, there's been a lot of work done on that in the short time that I've been here. Most of our things are working out rather well with our paid on call team. However, there is that challenge of recruitment and retention, and we see that every year as we try to recruit and retain those folks. It's kind of a revolving door. It's nobody's fault. Life happens, and we gain people and then we lose some people. So you'll probably see over the course of time that this model, meaning the paid on call model, will not be sustainable, and we'll have to augment with career staff. That way we know we have a dedicated response. And then back to the trend in our response times, there was a reduction since we went 24 hours of about 1 minute and 30 seconds per call. So that's a significant reduction when you think about somebody being in trouble or something being on fire. So that's a positive step. Next slide, please. And there we are. So these are some of the capital projects that we're undertaking in 2024. We're going to be looking at updating and revamping our emergency operations plan. So that's a plan that guides us through large scale events. It's a great document. It assists us when we have these situations. The plan that we currently use right now, I believe, was developed in 2013. So that means it's about 11 years old, and it's obviously time for an update because lots of things have changed in 11 years, specifically around growth. We're also wanting to update our fire underwriters report. So fire underwriters basically sets insurance rates for communities and such. And not to get too detailed because it is kind of a complicated thing, but at the end of the day, they look at fire stations, career staff versus volunteer or paid on call staff, water mains, fire hydrants, and then all of those things are taken into consideration, and that's how they establish insurance rates. So the better off we are in regards to some of those things I just mentioned, the better the insurance rates will be for people. So, you know, career versus paid on call is something that plays a part in that. From an equipment point of view, we're in pretty good shape. One of the things we're looking at replacing is a thermal imaging camera. That's a camera that provides us with a different level of safety and insight when we're in situations that are obviously smoke-filled environments and we haven't got any visibility. We're looking for fire and or hotspots, or we're also looking for people. So this camera is very valuable when we go in to do our attack, so to speak. The fire truck replacement, as I suggested earlier, is going to be termed Squad 1 possibly, and it will hopefully be arriving at the end of this year. And one of the other things was we had some hose problems, that it was fairly new hose that we purchased that was starting to fail on scene, which is not good when we need water. the hose was collapsing and causing us problems. So we identified that. We worked with our suppliers and we had to sort of revisit some things and purchase a different brand of hose for the safety of our staff. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of a snapshot here. Some of the things I've already discussed, I don't think I need to go into them again. And again, the key to this entire service and the documents in front of you really is the fire master plan that's been looked at and accepted in principle. And then below there, you can see our budget numbers as we move forward. Okay, and I think that is it. I'm more than happy to take any questions. Chief Kennedy's here with me and he will also step in if needed.
Thank you very much, Chief. Councillor St. Pierre?
Just something quick. When you're doing your work with the underwriters report, I was having a discussion with Ms. Moog earlier, and certainly the community is sometimes but not always aware of the actual immense savings on their fire insurance based on that. So hoping that when that all happens, you might have some numbers behind dollars spent on fire services versus dollars saved by property owners on their fire insurance. Because that would certainly help us at budget time to show the incredible value of your service directly in dollars and cents to property owners.
Yeah, certainly. That's something I'm pretty sure there's a chart or a graph
Okay,
in
there
the
might already be
actual.
something there.
Yeah, but we can probably scope that out and provide an information board when we do our budget open house.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The other thing I should mention is that just with myself and my family, we've had, I think, 2 or 3 911 calls that were all responded to by the fire service very quickly. I know that the fire service is actually pretty much the first face of a lot of residents in the community. And I think you've done a great job in terms of those calls as ambassadors for the community. So just happy with what that's been doing for all of us.
Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes?
Through your worship to the chief, I'm sort of interested in can you give me an idea how many calls you have to the Hope Center? And I'm not asking this to beat on sort of the homeless or the near homeless, but my concern is that when we are in discussions with our MLA, I would like to demonstrate that with the homeless situation the way it is, it does impact us in the number of calls we have to, and the number of firefighters and police officers we have to hire. Do you have that stat, or can you get it and without much problem? I don't need it tonight, but I would like to have that number.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Beddoes, that's certainly something we can provide for you. It's interesting. It might not be address specific, but I would think that a lot of the calls in that area stem from that facility.
Yeah.
And again, you know, a bigger percentage of our calls are based on the medical side of things. And, you know, we do support BC Ambulance through a first responder agreement. And our calls have certainly escalated due to some of the challenges they're facing. We're augmenting those.
Nice to get a
responders.
few numbers.
Yeah, so that's something we can definitely provide you.
And on another note from what Councillor St. Pierre says, because my wife works for hospice and we've had to call your service for a couple of firefighters to help us lift patients and things. And they're there each and every time, and it's very much appreciated. And the community appreciates it, that you're not just there for emergencies, you're there when you're not busy to help people out. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson, then La Jeunesse. Yep, and Bateman.
Thank you for the budget presentation tonight. So 1,286 calls or 100 and something, 105 a month or something, or 110 a month or something like that. So how many fires? Like I'm going to be that counselor that's going to ask the question. You know, you're going to get the question. How many are actually fires?
So I can't answer that right now.
No, and that's fine.
But I can tell you that we're not fighting a lot of fires.
Right.
When we do our data, again, we still don't have proper RMS, and that's something that is a whole other conversation. And RMS, just for everybody's records management system. So we're collecting our data through Saanich dispatch, but also through our own means at the end of the day. But having said that, when when you talk fire, there's all sorts of classifications. Is it a
Right.
bonfire? Is it a car fire? Is it a structure fire? Like, what does that look like, right? But what I can tell you tonight is that we don't do all kinds of fires. We have varied events regarding fire, but nothing real significant at this point. And now I'm not sure why that is. Is it luck? Is it building code, fire code? It could be lots of variables. But at the end of the day, I think we're fortunate that we don't. I personally don't want to see them for lots of different reasons, but you know, I can give you probably a broad number at another time for sure.
And I expect that answer and thank you. And thank you for what you do in our community. I know that my family, both my in-laws and my parents, first responders, I think 4 or 5 times in 2023, firefighters were first there, and did a lot to alleviate the anxiety. You know, they're not the ambulance attendants, but they responded extremely professionally and very, very welcome in our community to have them doing that. My next question is maybe a technical question, and maybe it's for another time. Is so the response time is decreasing. There was a time frame, and I think it was prior to me being on this council, where there were certain areas of our community that our response time wasn't adequate to get a lower insurance rate. How are we doing on that front? I think it was the back end of Sun River, actually. I think is what here. If I remember, people were paying a higher insurance rate.
I thought it was more rural areas where there wasn't piped water and that we got some accreditation with the water tender and that made a difference. But
I think it was just straight response times in distance, I think.
there was something about at one point where I think Sun River could not fall within the 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember exactly. I'm pulling out of the Mind Palace.
So through your mayor, we do have a policy with the building department in regards to a 10-minute response time, but it's more specific to setbacks and the building code things.
Right.
So that's in place currently. And the reason we have not changed that, even though our response times are getting better, is for the simple reason we still do not have the depth of staff to successfully fight a full structure fire. So until that time comes, we will be keeping that in place. Back to Mayor Tate's comment, rural fires present different challenges and response times changes, obviously, and they don't have the water. That's not that they don't have the water. We have a different means of supplying water, right?
Exactly.
And until that changes, whether that's on another fire hall or pipes or hydrants, those numbers for them most likely won't change drastically.
Okay.
You have anything else to add?
Thank you.
There was something though when Chief Mount was here, something did shift a little bit. I
So
think.
if I can comment on that quickly, it was our Superior Tender Shuttle Service accreditation. So that's something that with our mutual aid partners, we can provide X amount of gallons of water in a certain amount of time for a rural structure fire. So yeah, so once that was achieved, then those folks in the rural areas would have received some savings in their insurance.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse and Bateman. Councillor Beddoes, can you just turn off your mic? Sorry.
I was gonna ask what percentage of calls are health related? And if you had that number, but the reason I guess what I'm thinking is if we're doing the job of BC Ambulance and their argument is that they don't have staffing, we do, and so maybe they should be chipping in some money to help supplement your services.
Yeah, so I will give you my best guess as to what percentage it is, but I think it's safe to say, and chime in if I'm wrong, probably 50% of our calls, maybe. That might be a little high, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you look at the regional average on fire departments, when you look at medical calls in general, it's around half of their call volume. I think when we looked at our 2023 data, again, with a caveat of we don't really have a big data set to dive into and get a real good read on this, is anywhere around 65 to 70% of our call volume last year was medical related. So it was a little higher than what you see in the average, but that fluctuates as well. So I'm not saying that that's going to be our consistent average, but for us, when we looked at it, that was what we were looking at.
And I'll if I may, I'll comment on what you said about the province and getting some funding. I mean, these are things that are happening as we speak. I continue to flood Mayor Tate with information in regards to what the province may or should be doing in regards to those things. So, you know, I mean, we could talk about it for quite a while, but at the end of the day, there's probably a movement to say, you know what, if we're going to continue responding to these calls that the ambulance can't respond to, then there needs to be some funding provided. I don't know if you want to add to that, Mayor.
No, I fully agree. And it continues to build on the advocacy file of us maintaining a downloaded service. And it's not sustainable over the long term, and we really need the province to step in there. So there are the resolution database continues to grow and build on this one. So we're not the only local government leading this. There's certainly many others that are. And you'll likely see some action at UBCM, but it's also a provincial election year. So when candidates are out, this is good. I love it when they come to my door. Yeah, lots of questions.
So I guess if we were able to have some accurate numbers so that we can provide proof to them, that might help as well.
Yep, sure.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I was going to follow up on those matters around first response, and just, you know, as the representative for the Sauk Homelessness Coalition, I have to just point out that the Hope Center is one of many spots within the community that require first response from our fire department. So I just, you know, we had a meeting yesterday, the remarkable work being done at the Sauk shelter and our attempt to battle stigma for that population. And yes, they're a handful. And at the same time, they're part of our community. So my other question regards so you've got a $2.3 million budget at the moment, and it'll be up to 3.5 million by 2028. That's largely new staffing, right? As you build out your moving up to 16, I think it is firefighters, right? By 2028.
Certainly, yeah, that's our goal.
Yeah.
As you're aware, you provided support for us. My presentation last year talked
Yes.
about 2 staff right up until 2027.
Right.
That provides us with 4 crews of 4, so
Yes.
16 career staff, which is a reasonable response.
Yes.
Then we'll have to reevaluate where we are based on growth and a bunch of other things. So a big portion of that is staffing, obviously. But then if you look at fleet and equipment cost
Yeah.
and all those things,
I was going to ask about that. Are there's in your fleet, are there any major $1 million plus projects?
Sure, and I think Ben identified some of that last with our 5-year plan
Right.
moving forward, is that we do have some of our apparatus that are gonna be scheduled for replacement. Obviously, right now, you know, our options for replacement are anywhere from a 48 to larger wait time to get delivery of these trucks. So we are strategically looking at what our fleet looks like and making sure that we are preparing ourselves for what the next 5 to 10 years looks like, and that when we're ordering these apparatus that we're gonna, you know, accurately fill the need that we have looking forward, not what we're seeing today.
Well, thank you as ever for your highly professional work. Thank you.
Sorry, Deputy Chief, when you say 48, like 48 days, 48 months?
Apologies, months. Yeah,
Months,
it's
4
almost
years?
right now, by the time you get yourself into a queue of ordering a fire truck, you're looking at a 2-year wait time, if not more, to get it delivered.
Oh, that's frightening. Okay, thank you for your attention to that and the timeliness of it all. I just have a technical question. The thermal camera, will that also detect pets?
certainly.
Okay,
Yep.
that's good to know. And I grew up under this notion that with daylight savings, you're supposed to replace all the smoke detector batteries as well as your clocks. So, you know, that is something fun to keep in mind. It's, you know, I sort of joked with our former premier about when he was eliminating daylight savings. I'm like, how will we ever remember to do this important work? And also I just appreciate the work of the as noted by others with the response, even for medical being the first to arrive. I myself was in that position awkwardly last summer. It was a relief to see a familiar face when I was in such a weird situation. after it was determined by the LS team that I wasn't having a stroke or a severe heart attack, but still needed to go to the hospital. It gave me the opportunity to ask the paramedics all kinds of questions about service delivery and the like. They did indicate to me that they had a very positive working relationship with both RCMP and fire here in Sault. They said that isn't the case everywhere within the region, but they do appreciate the camaraderie, the togetherness, the working together. So I just wanted to pass that on if I haven't so already. And also the team that you have is sometimes the last face of Sault that someone will see, aside from perhaps family visiting. And so that is also a very important piece when someone is, in that case, it was my mother and it was one of your firefighters and it was the last person that she saw from Sault. So it's just the reality that we're facing, but thank you for the work. I do have a number of items that I'll be following up with the CRD on. And so certainly I'll add this about the matter regarding record management. It's complicated. We'll get into that on another time. And also see what emerges through AVICC's advocacy work occurring later in April there. And I was just made a note on swag in related to the police discussion around traffic and pedestrian safety. Just a swag to consider that we could work towards is a reflector, and even council members can wear these because some of us are wearing black when we're out and not visible. So look at it. Well, when we're out and I'm guilty, I have a black jacket and all black and I'm all walking, I'm not being seen. So if we also have pieces that we could use and that would be, it just enhances visibility. So for everything, many purposes. Okay, member of the public, any questions for our fire services team? Fire rescue and emergency team, I should say.
Okay, I have a few questions. You had 24-hour service, 235,000. We have volunteers. We've always had 24-hour service with volunteers. My sons were volunteer firemen. And I want to know why is there a revolving door? I mean, I know we have to pay when we bring in volunteers as well, and we pay them to, we have to recruit them, and then also we have to train them, which costs a lot. So why the revolving door? Why are they leaving?
So to sort of touch on your first comment, I've lost my train of thought. So back to the revolving door. So let's start there then. The revolving door is out of my control. We don't have the answers. I mean, these are young families, some of them, lots of, 2 different jobs, children in sports, their hobbies, their personal lives, time with their family. Those are all commitments that they have. So on some level, are we the priority anymore? I don't think we are. So it's just change, and this is where we're heading. And the benefit of having a career is it's a dedicated response. So with the paid on call or volunteer, if you want to call them that, there's no guarantee they're coming. They're not mandated to come.
Okay. Okay, have you done a questionnaire? And remember that was done before. There was a survey done to find out why they were leaving, why people were leaving?
Well, as I said earlier, those are the reasons. It's their lives are busy and we're not that important anymore, if you will.
To the member of the public, we do receive there's exit interview discussions as to what's happening, and this is what's informing us.
Yeah.
It's not a general survey, but there are conversations with departing members as to what's happened.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add one thing, the model back in the day for paid on calls, the actual training requirements 15, 20 years ago has changed drastically for what it is today. And a lot of that comes from the Office of the Fire Commissioner and a minimum training standard book that they provide to us that guides us in terms of what the training and the hours that they need to put in and the skills and things that they need to check off. So maybe with that, there's a lot more expectation put on to our volunteer staff, and at times where they're living their lives and they have their families, that might just be the straw that breaks the back, and they change their priorities and they look at their family, and we're not that anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question I have was $91,000 for a fire inspector. And then you also have a fire prevention inspector. Are they one of the same?
Mhm.
Okay. So do you hire somebody separate to do fire inspections?
Well, currently, it's our response crews that have been sort of offsetting that task, if you will. But it's important to have a dedicated resource so we can actually achieve some things over the course of the calendar year. There's a lot of businesses that require annual inspections. There's a lot of other facilities that require inspections. So when our teams are out doing medical calls, firefighting, all those other things, we're falling behind in those inspections. So it's important that we maintain those for the safety of everybody.
Do you do fire inspections?
I can do fire inspections, yes.
Just asking, because I know when we lived in Sanish, the chief did all the fire inspections.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Let's see, what routine, okay, the routine inspections are once a year.
It depends on the occupancy. And then once this Fire Safety Act comes into place, we're going to have the latitude to sort of prioritize those occupancies, and we may choose to do them every other year or every third year. It really depends on what the occupancy is. So assembly occupancies, like let's say, hospitals or
Mhm.
Seniors' homes and such, they would require more attention and more time. Buildings that are brand new, that are up to code, we may not have to be there as regular because they're, for the most part, complying with the codes of today, which are very stringent.
Mhm. Okay. I guess the same question that councils were asking too is about the 20% increase of, for what it was of calls with the, you said 50 to 65% of the calls are for medical, correct? And what about for accidents?
We don't have a stat really
don't-
that would look at what accidents would be.
I guess those, to me, those things are important because then we need to know where the resources go. If it's medical, and if it's accidents and fires are less, do we buy more fire equipment? Do we buy another tanker truck? Do we buy another ladder truck, or what do we do? That's why I'm asking these questions, because if we're not fighting fires, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Well,
and you-
I think we don't want vehicles just sort of, melt composting in the parking lot. So there are requirements
Well,
as
they
noted
don't
earlier.
compost, yeah.
No, but I mean, like just sitting, and if you go to start it, it doesn't start. I mean, that part of it, as the chief had indicated, was that it's all part of our fire master planning. And all of that is being informed all the time. So
Right.
it's ongoing work that we need to do. Ideally, we don't have fires, but we are in a wildfire risk area and earthquake areas, and just seeing what's occurred in Japan, every earthquake, a fire will follow.
Right, right.
So we need to be prepared all the time, but I certainly appreciate that.
And your response?
You make a great point, and it's definitely something that we do when we look ahead and we look at what our service model is going to look like. And when I alluded to when we're doing our strategic planning for our fleet, we definitely take that into account. Are we accounting for the way our call volume is changing and we're changing as a department, and our incidents are changing up until a point where we get to be able to accurately guarantee that we'll never have to go to a fire again. We still have to
No,
look
I
at preparing for
agree.
all these different types of
Right.
incidents when they come, regardless of the percentage of our call volume.
Right. So do you have to get more medical equipment because of the amount of medical calls?
A lot of it is our annual training and our requirements that we have to maintain for that. The equipment doesn't change drastically. We've added some additional protocols under our current first responder licensing that allows us to do certain things that we weren't in our scope before, which is like use BP cuffs and different types of modalities that are available to us now, but it's not a drastic change for us right now, no.
Right. So the province probably should be kicking in for the training at least.
Well, at least.
At least, yes. But I mean, that's why I'm asking those questions. It's important to know that where are the resources needed? Are we,
And just on your earlier point, Ms. Lures, is that we are heading into a budget open house. And so that's where these are useful queries. So it's information we can have available at that event.
Well, yes, and I think those
Yeah.
percentages should be available to the public at that time. That's why I'm asking
Mm-hmm.
that because those questions going to be asked, going to be good to know where you put your resources, as what I brought forward with the policing, same thing. How many calls are for mental health? How many are for alcohol and abuse? Because if you don't know where your calls are, then where do you put your resources?
We also report this in our annual report every year. So it does also show in that report where those deliverables are, like
Yeah.
where those calls are.
But it should be in our budget, because if it's alcohol and abuse and how do we deal with that? Do we get more firefighters? Do we get more ambulance, or do we look at the cause and start looking for resources for prevention? Just my
Yeah,
thoughts.
no, that makes sense. And ambulance, as you probably know as well, has not increased since we incorporated.
But prevention, it should be
So-
what we should be looking at, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation and your time with us together. And as always, you're welcome to stay or have calls to attend to. I'll leave that with you. Thank you.
Yeah, just in closing, I wanted to thank you for all your comments and the feedback you provide us today in regards to our staff and how they're managing themselves on calls, and unfortunately at your homes. It's good for us to hear. It makes us feel proud to sit here in these chairs. So thank you so much.
Perhaps council and everyone viewing today, perhaps it's 8:30. This may be an appropriate time for a health break. Are we looking at? How about 7 minutes? Because just with the volume and the number of facilities available, that may be appropriate. So if we synchronize our time, I currently have 8:31, so we'll reconvene at about 8:38. Thank you to those viewing online. 38, so I'll ask everyone to please get to their seats so we can carry on. Thank you. Okay, back to staff for the next department, please.
Good evening, through your worship to council and members of the public. I'm pleased to present the proposed 2024 budget for the Facilities, Parks and Environmental Services Division. The key topics I'll be touching on tonight are an overview of the Facilities, Parks and Environmental Services Division staffing, key functions and service delivery. I'll then touch on the key deliverables identified for our service, and highlights of the major capital projects will be provided for both parks and facilities. So the division currently has 6 full-time staff. This increased from 5 in 2020. The positions are manager, environmental services coordinator, who oversees our park use permitting program, stewardship initiatives, park planning and special projects, development referrals and new acquisitions, as well as hazard trees and invasive species management. Our parks lead hand oversees the maintenance and operations of parks and public spaces, including playgrounds, public washrooms, and boulevards. And the lead hand supervises 2 full-time parks workers and approximately 5 seasonal auxiliary staff. Our facilities and construction lead oversees construction and carpentry projects in both parks and our public facilities, as well as the general maintenance and repair of municipal buildings. So the division cares for 92 community parks, over 40 kilometers of trails and associated park infrastructure, including 5 playgrounds and 10 public washrooms, plus maintenance of our transit shelters, boulevards, and facilities. The service's proposed operating budget for 2024 is 1.36 million, which comprises approximately 5.5% of the district's total operating budget. The 2024 request includes an increase of approximately 68,000 from the 2023 numbers to account for actual costs of utilities, security, janitorial items. Next slide, please. The key deliverables for the service in 2024 are continued implementation of the Parks and Trails Master Plan, support public events, stewardship initiatives, and administrate park use permits. So for in 2023, there were approximately 24 park use permits issued, plus several community events that staff sponsored and the service supported. We look to respond promptly to calls for service. In 2023, there were approximately 158 calls related to parks and environmental services, with 51 of those for hazardous trees specifically. And there were 40 calls related to municipal facility maintenance and repairs. We're working towards an improved asset management database and asset condition assessments. And with this improved data, we aim to maintain all assets in good or better condition in the long term. We work with other departments to respond to development referrals, and that is, as the chief mentioned, a very collaborative approach in the district here. So just of note, we will strive to find operational efficiencies in order to continue providing the current level of service with the resources available. It's anticipated that additional resources will be required over time as new park and public assets are acquired and added to our system. Demand on the division is also expected to increase due to the increasing complexity of issues such as encampments in parks, archaeological considerations, for example, as well as due to the desire to continue to improve our customer service. Next slide, please. So we'll now highlight the capital projects to be advanced in the 2024 budget, starting with the ones related to parks, and then I'll be looking at ones for the municipal facilities. So off the top is Ravens Ridge Park. These enhancements are a continuation of the sport box construction and landscape design work commenced in prior years. There's some remaining grant funds as well as additional funds proposed from the Growing BC Fund, the Playing Reserve Fund, and this would advance perimeter landscaping, installation of bleachers, parking improvements, and a new multi-sport games area court. For the Little River Crossing project, this project is a critical investment in our active transportation network, supported by the Parks and Trails Master Plan, as well as our Climate Action Plan. The district received a large federal grant for the project that will be supplemented by our Parks DCC Fund, Casino Reserve, and Community Building Funds. We've also submitted an application to the BC Active Transportation Grant Program, looking for an additional 500,000. So the project's currently in the detailed design phase, and we've obtained most of our environmental approvals. The next steps are to obtain additional land use approvals and move to getting the project, breaking ground in the second half of this year. And the project will span into 2025, largely due to certain work needing to be done in critical windows for fish habitat as well as bird nesting. Next slide, please. So in the budget, we're proposing a playground equipment safety upgrade capital project. This capital item is proposed to be funded from the Growing BC Fund for 100,000 in 2024 and continuing in the years thereafter. So establishing a plan for adding and replacing playgrounds is a key initiative in the Parks and Trails Master Plan. This ongoing playground improvement program would allow for annual safety upgrades as well as improvements and expansion of our playground facilities. Specific improvements targeted in 2024 include resurfacing and repair of equipment at Broom Hill Playground, as well as some drainage improvements at Woodland Creek Playground. Over the next 2 years, staff propose conducting more of a design and engagement process on more substantial improvements, which to apply these funds to in future years. Next slide, please. So the Quimper Park Memorial Wall, this is a carryover project proposed to be funded from the SUC program of the Arts Reserve. It's a $60,000 budget item, and this would include design and construction being conducted in-house by staff with limited reliance on consultants for the archaeological oversight, earthworks, and surveying aspects. We will be bringing forward a design and update to council prior to advancing this work as requested. For the pier and boardwalk, critical maintenance and repairs are needed to ensure the asset remains in good condition and that the lifespan is maximized. 75,000 is proposed in 2024, with additional works to take place in subsequent years based on recommendations received in a recent engineer's condition assessment report. These works include replacement of such components as planks and railings, timber bracing, the piles, and float structures. And the park assets repairs and maintenance. This is 75,000 to be allocated to park specific assets separate from our municipal facilities. Priority projects include addressing repairs and improvements to walkways, stairs, bridges, trail resurfacing, that type of work. And we'll move on to our facility projects identified. Again, these projects are looking at maximizing the use and extending the lifespan of our facilities. So we have that $75,000 facility asset repair and maintenance component. And this is really to address our office building needs over time. So things like improvements to our sprinkler system here in this building, some interior improvements for lighting and flooring and that type of thing, just kind of minor works, as well as exterior fencing and railings. The municipal hall architect project, this is a carryover as well, funded from the Capital Asset Replacement Fund. This is to look at accommodating future organizational growth and needs. The initial design considerations can be done in-house, again, with staff expertise and retaining more professional services later in the year. And $150,000 for the Parks office at Keltasson Road. This is, again, critical maintenance and repair to maximize the lifespan of the building, focused on the building envelope needs, roof, windows, siding, etc. And that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much for your report and your time with us today. As always, the good work that's occurring out there with our staff. There's often comments as folks are about enjoying the trail system as they encounter a park worker. The consistent theme I hear is, oh, they just seem so cheerful going about their jobs. So obviously enjoying the work or just enjoying Souk in general. So, but it's positive if that's sort of the response that folks are receiving. For the Broom Hill area playground in particular, some equipment had come out likely because it's aged out. Will we see something new go into that vacant spot this year, or are we looking to see what would fit there?
So for that park this year, it's really a kind of scaling back exercise and addressing the surfacing material and maybe some repair of existing components. In the years forward, we'll be looking at a more substantial upgrade to that specific park playground, and that gives us some time to do some proper planning and engagement as well.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Just something fun to do is just to do some work at the schools and see what kids like to see. It seems that monkey bars tends to be very popular, Gaga ball pits with a not so rough surface underneath, sort of fun things. So
yeah,
okay.
hopefully if once we address the safety considerations,
Yes.
then we can maybe have a little bit left for some fun.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful. And then just in terms of the work that's going to continue on up at Ravens Ridge, I have a shovel I'd like to put to work. So hoping that we could do some sort of breaking ground ceremony and we can all shovel a little bit. And it's getting a bit dusty and it
Yes,
needs to be
yeah.
in the dirt. So just something fun to consider. Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm just curious about, I know that there's some interest in community gardens, and I was wondering if you have the resources as it stands to help facilitate community gardens in our park areas, or whether or not that would require additional resources.
At this time, that's a great question. We have limited resources to support things like potentially like a new water connection. But not the fulsome installation of what a garden may or may not need. I don't know the extent of that. That's not built into the current.
Okay.
Resources.
I'll be interested as we progress that particular. I know we'll have a presentation at some point from a delegation, and I'm interested to see what that conversation will lead to. Just curious about this right now. Thanks.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, just a quick question. Maybe I didn't write it down fast enough, but 2026 Broom Hill Park, you're putting $1.2 million worth of new equipment, or that's what you're hoping to do. Where does that money come from?
Looking forward to 2026. Perhaps my colleague Ben can help pinpoint the source of that funding.
It's, it's quite a chunk of change, so I mean.
Yeah, this could include a broader kind of reconfiguration of the access to the playground as well.
Sure, I can answer that. It's in the plan, $100,000 funded from the casino revenue and 950,000 funded by a grant that we hope to receive in the future.
Okay. Oh. All right. Thank you for answering that question. Very good.
Counselor Pearson?
Yes, thank you for your report. So maybe not to you directly, but through to the finance, what's the source of the DCC funds? Where does that come in? Is that direct DCC contributions? Development applications?
Development cost charges, so we receive them as revenue throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, there's an entry similar to allocating it to a reserve. So it's works similar to a reserve. The revenue is received through either subdivision or through building permit stage. So at one point or the other is when they're received.
Okay, so we peel off a part for the parks, right? That's the way I understand.
That's correct. Yeah, there's a fee for each of the allocations. So drainage, parks, roads, and sewer.
Right. Yeah, okay, thank you. And 60K for the Quimper Park wall. So will we get the Quimper Park wall built in 2024?
I think we all would, yes.
Counselor Lajeunesse and Bateman?
Yeah, I don't actually have a question, but just a desire. And we discussed it a little bit earlier, is just when we're designing parks and trails, etc., if we can try to work toward making them accessible for everyone. And we have an aging population, and I aged way faster than I should have, I guess, but it's I realize that there's an added cost sometimes, and the topography is challenging in Souk, but we built a transcontinental railroad in the 1800s, so it can be done. We don't have slave labor anymore, but so it costs more. But yeah, so if we can just keep that in mind as we're designing these things, that would be good.
Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Taylor, for your report. And, I had an interest, I go look at the Parks and Trails Master Plan from time to time and look at those ambitious set of short and medium term goals. And I'm just curious, when you look at that plan and you look at what has been achieved to date and what could be, is there anything that you would just love to see progress at this point that is not funded?
That's a really generous question to ask. I think given the, just capacity of the staff that we have, what's presented is realistic.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly going forward, I'd like to just further digest that plan and really flush out all the ambitious things in it. How can we make it achievable and still relevant and do a better job at tracking our successes? So that is a chunk of work in itself.
Yes.
to bring back, and
yes,
I look forward to talking about that further.
Yeah. The one that interests me, and Helen Ritz in the audience the other week mentioned the town center plan and the need for perhaps some financing for it. And I was wondering about the John Phillips Memorial Park master plan, the community garden group, for instance, has identified it as a potential spot, but until the master plan is completed. Yeah. So I'm wondering, do you see that? I don't think I saw that in the 5-year plan.
So through the chair, it's not specifically in the 5-year at this point. What is, and I didn't speak to specifically, was completing the work on the Whiff and Spit engineering and access report. So that is underway and to be completed this year to inform master planning of Whiff and Spit. We are kind of behind the scenes looking at just John Phillips as the next one and what might that entail, but at this time don't have a specific budget ask associated with it.
My observation on that is that the community probably could gather at pretty low cost to do a master planning without the need for an outside consultant. And it could be something that could be done on the cheap. Anyway, thank you to you and your team. I was part of that tree planting, and Ms. Boquist was there along with her team, and just remarkable skill set. And what I suggested was that she do a video on how to plant a tree. And, yeah, so thanks to all of you.
I think a video on how to prune the tree later is also very helpful. Yeah, and just another ask just to throw out there is just as we go towards the landscaping pieces, I'm just reminded of the wildfire and fire smarting. And it would be an opportunity going ahead if we put in the fire smarting landscaping and then had any type of an info board where where you could identify what what the vegetation is and where to find it, or in the type of species that exist and we share the lands with. I think it would just be a really great way to inform the public. And a lot of this is happening even in areas of our parks where it's like, hey, you're entering old growth area and here's some things that you need to take in mind. They're really useful educational pieces. So
thank you
throwing
for
it out
those
there.
suggestions. Actually, I think it was yesterday, we kind of did a little audit of the grounds here from a fire smart perspective and talked about what we could do to showcase and make some improvements. Thank you.
Excellent. Just because at Ravens Ridge, it'll all be new as we eliminate the invasives there.
Yeah, and Chief and others have looked at those plans and helped us develop them.
That's
from a fire
awesome.
Smart perspective.
Thank you so much for that. I assumed that was the case, but I thought I would just throw it out there. So that's great. One more from Council.
One more, and that I see in 2026, you have the municipal hall is front and center, replace the roof. Will this place fall down before then, or no? Hopefully not.
It's
pretty solid.
Incremental improvements
Right.
are planned, but certainly that building envelope is overdue. But we want to think about the inside renovations related to that exterior work.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just on that, there are a few exterior areas that could use a little paint as well.
Thank you. We'll get you a brush. I'm kidding. Okay, anyway, thank you very much. Seeing that our member of the public has departed, we'll move on to the next presentation. And just council, we're approaching 9 o'clock, so I appreciate it, but You're right. Sorry. Please proceed. Thank you. We'll stop talking.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the operations services, which will include engineering for roads, underground subdivision services, and sanitary sewer, but Paul will be talking about the sewer. So the human resources support for the roads, engineering, and operations sides of operations includes the director of operations, manager of engineering and infrastructure, manager of subdivision, who's also the approving officer, manager of wastewater, a lead engineering tech, an engineering tech, a land development tech, and 1.7 admin assistants, one supporting wastewater and one that's shared between engineering and parks, and 3 wastewater operators. Next slide, please. The engineering budget represents 13% of the district's overall budget, totaling 1.68 million. Within the service area, we maintain sidewalks, local roads, streetlights, stormwater, and bridges. Of note, the number that represents currently in our inventory. However, some areas, like recently, we've come across storm drains that are not in our inventory that we now have to include and sometimes require upgrade. And there's been a few, I would say, probably recently. So there's probably more out there too that we try to capture whenever we come across them. And additionally, we also undertake capital projects and developments, and the volume of resources to that staff manage to maintain so that we continue to grow. Next. Funding these services is reflected on this slide. Of note, engineering is not requesting additional funds this year for operational expenses beyond the contractual obligations with wages and related adjustments for benefits. That said, service levels will be expanding in 2024 as they do alongside development and with efforts geared towards capital projects, which I will talk about shortly. Given our existing human resources, responding in this fashion with a focus on capital projects is a priority for staff, which also aligns with what we continually hear from the community and traffic management being a top priority. This is far from a comprehensive list. However, this slide offers a snapshot of the work ahead between operational and capital projects, the latter, which I will provide in greater detail on now. Next slide, please. The current financial plan proposes significant investments in major road corridor projects, which areas early phases in the ultimate build out to facilitate the flow of local area traffic and how vehicles and pedestrians move off of Highway 14. The key consideration for these roadworks and related financial planning is that design commonly spans a year before the ground is broken, with doing the design and the consultant and all of that. And then the actual build out is usually 1 or 2 fiscal years. Like church would have started last year. We started the design for church the year before that, and then it will finish this year. So usually 3 years, including design. Currently, the community is seeing this with the works taken on Charters North and Church through Roundabout. Specifics to design phases for 2024 will be continuing the design for Charters South. That would be Gullidge to Highway 14 and the Charters and Highway 14 intersection in conjunction with Maudie. The Throop connector, the Phillips Road, which will be from Highway 14 to the Throop connector, and design for Ella Road. Taking the design timelines and applying them to the years ahead, you'll see the goal for completion of Charters North, which is under construction right now, Charters South and Charters Road intersection to be fully realized in conjunction with one another, ideally by the end of 2025, Ella Road to be constructed in 2025, Throop Road construction to be undertaken through 26-27, pending financial resources, and Phillips Road corridor beginning in 2027. This slide shows how these projects all come together for the future build out in supporting how people get around Souk. As we're talking about the budget, I've included a sample from a grant application. We regularly apply for grants to fund the implementation of the Transportation Master Plan and minimize as best as possible the impact on taxes. However, all of these jobs are expensive. While previously mentioned, long-term planning is underway alongside realizing Charters Road North and the Church Throop Roundabout. Engineering services will be updating the DCC bylaw, preparing the design on the Wadhams Transit Exchange, and anticipating some works in updating the TMP pending the outcomes of the workshop council endorsed on Monday's meeting. Additionally, ongoing maintenance of our bridges requires investments to maximize their lifespan, some of which of the work will be undertaken this year. Other capital works that residents will see and and are responsive to the needs identified by the community, include capital works associated with line painting, street lighting, bus stops, road safety, patch and pave works, and stormwater management. Staff are currently working with communications to produce a multi-year horizon in these areas so that the community can better see the investments being made to their neighborhoods and when they'll be realized. While staff will provide and prioritize areas, the intent of such materials to remain nimble and responsive to the community's emergent needs. Examples of this include crosswalk enhancements being completed for Phillips Road, neighboring Sea Park, Otter Point, and Road Night, Church Road on the Stickleback Urban Trail, Grant Road at French, and these were all prioritized in 2023, specific to crosswalks, and then Townsend will be on the list priority list for next year for flashers. Specific to patch and pave, these funds are often used for pavement remediation and repairs. And now I'll hand it over to Paul.
Welcome to the wastewater portion of the operations presentation. I'm Paul Bohemier, the manager of wastewater. This evening I will be speaking to the 2024 deliverables in our budget and provide an update on the current wastewater treatment plant expansion. Oh, Ryan went a little fast. That's okay. So just a snapshot here of the operational and capital, which you work under. The operations falls under the daily operations of the wastewater staff, which is like monitoring, plant operations, sampling analysis, equipment maintenance, process optimization, reporting regulatory compliance, staff training, and emergency training as well. I will speak in further detail on the capital deliverables. The West Coast Road Force Main, which is a DCC funded project, is to be tendered this month, anticipated to begin construction this spring and completed this summer. This will remove a major capacity choke point and allow for future capacity within the collection system. This will also eliminate an odor concern surrounding the Maple easement, and it will create a backup force main for the West Coast Road lift station, which conveys 80% of the wastewater to the treatment plant. Second will be the odor mitigation, which is funded under sewer fees. Following the completion of the West Coast Road force main, wastewater will begin the process of installing an odor control system at West Coast Road lift station. We are currently researching a number of options that could assist with the historic odor concerns surrounding that lift station. Additionally, we are currently adding a chemical feed system at the Burr Road lift station, which causes odor concerns in Stone Ridge Estates. This is a project that is being done jointly between facilities and wastewater. The operational certificate, which was grant funded as well. This process began in February 2022. This will allow for the first time in Souk's history to have compliance with the Ministry of Environment. This has not existed yet, so we're almost done. We also have Church Road Lift Station. This is a donated asset by the developer for servicing Wadham's Farm. The construction is complete on this project, with final commissioning taking place this March and throughout April, whereafter the district will take ownership of this lift station. The flow model update, which is funded by DCCs as well. This current update is underway on Souk's wastewater flow model to better understand the impacts of new BC housing regulations and how they might impact the collection and treatment system within Souk. Next, we have the capital asset replacement, which is sewer fee funded. Currently underway is we have a replacement of an aeration bladder system. There are 1,800 bladders between the original SBR and digesters at the wastewater treatment plant. This repair is being done in-house by wastewater staff. We have currently purchased all equipment required and at $38,000 with great savings to the district. And on the next one is a wastewater treatment plant expansion. So I'll break it down into what has been completed and what is currently underway. So what is completed this so far is in this photo, you can actually see the aeration system in the new SBR that we have, the sequencing batch reactor. That's what I was speaking to before, that we will be changing out in the other 4 basins we have. But this sequencing batch reactor provides primary treatment for the wastewater treatment plant. It adds an additional 15 or 1.5 million liters of capacity, which works out to about 5,500 residents. The advantages is allows for future capacity for businesses and residents within Souk and longer detention time for better treatment, which has plagued us since I've been here. Next slide, please. Another new piece of equipment that we have in the plant is the equalization tank. This retrieves primary effluent from the sequencing batch reactors, or also known as the SBRs. This effluent is then pumped at a constant rate through the tertiary disc filter and followed by passing through the UV system, which I'll speak to on the next slides for its final treatment. The key benefit to this is it provides additional capacity for longer detention and consistent flow rates for effluent for better treatment. Next, please. The rotating drum thickener. I won't get into the nitty-gritty on this one, but it allows for a thicker and more consistent sludge in our digesters that will in turn create a drier biosolids. The advantages to this is lower transportation costs of biosolids, which is one of the highest costs we experience at the wastewater treatment plant. This also provides full build-out capacity for the digester system, reducing future operational costs and building. So we don't have, traditionally right now we have a digester per sequencing batch reactor, and this would come at a cost of 1.5 million. With this device, we don't have to build any additional ones. I can actually reduce the sludge thickeners, which would get the sludge which enters the digesters for processing at a much thicker rate than we've been able to in the past. Next slide, please. And the one we're most excited about is the tertiary disc filter. Currently, the plant is only provides secondary treatment. This will increase our treatment process to tertiary on the final effluent received from the equalization tank. This filtration system further removes solids prior to the effluent entering the UV for disinfection. This will assist with compliance on our total suspended solids and that we experience in compliance issues in high flows and seasonal weather changes. So what's still in progress? Well, the construction is pretty much complete at this point. We're in the final phases of commissioning and performance testing as we speak. Staff are currently being trained on the operation of the new equipment, and we're implementing new regulatory testing due to the new capacity. And if you see in the picture there, that picture is of a new composite sampler. This sampling equipment is now required on the influent and effluent of the plant for regulatory sampling. These samples are taken 24 hours a day to better understand what is being received and discharged from the wastewater treatment plant for federal and provincial regulations. This concludes the presentation, but feel free to ask me any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you so much. Always enlightening. Quick question about sludge.
Yep.
My understanding is sludge can actually still contain pharmaceuticals. Is it actually safe? How toxic is it? How bad is it in terms of that sort of thing?
Well, the sludge that we use actually goes to the landfill at this current time, but in the future, I'm still in discussions with the CRD, the biosolids or sludge. So what happens is the sludge goes through the centrifuge and it becomes almost like a powder, and those biosolids are going to be used for burning to create concrete at plants, but they're still having issues with the processing facility in Langford right now.
Okay, so that.
But for the toxicity, none of that enters back into our system, and the CRD has put a ban on all soil use of biosolids. We don't use it for that either. So
there's still a ban because of potential contamination from pharmaceuticals.
It's not just for the pharmaceuticals, it's also based on microplastics and other reasons as well.
Perfect. Curious about the wastewater expansion being almost complete. Is there some sort of a ribbon cutting ceremony being planned?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm welcome to the idea, but yeah, let me know.
Excellent. Thank you. Got a thumbs up from the comms department. Councillor Pearson.
Yep, thank you for your report on such an exciting subject as wastewater. West Coast Force Main, where does it start and where does it end?
The West Coast Force Main, currently, where does it go? Or
No,
where's
the
it going?
project one, the one. that-
It'll start, it's at where Maple meets the highway, so Maple Avenue, and then it'll flow directly to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, perfect. And I was gonna ask about the smell, but you did talk about that. Infiltration, I think last year you did a presentation that you were working on infiltration.
Oh.
How are you doing with that?
Great. So we're currently experiencing about 11 million to 12 million liters of flow. The first year I was here, we did a chemical grouting. First we smoke tested and videoed many areas of concern within the district. We found that the Helgeson district was the worst by far and also leading up French Road. So we chemically grouted the entire system. And the peak flows that I've experienced this year is 5 million liters. So that took 7 million liters of capacity outside of the plant in wet weather flows. And the cost of that was $112,000.
Good job.
Yeah.
Last question is sort of like a series of questions. Last year at AVICC, I toured the NRD, Nanaimo Regional District
Mhm.
Treatment Plant. And I asked them there about, we're surrounded by drain fields. We have a small sewer catchment area.
Mhm.
And I think I've asked you this question before, huge revenue generator, and traffic on our highway. One of the things I've been thinking about ways to get Highway 14 better. We have estimated sometimes between 20 and 25 trucks a day hauling sewage.
Yep.
From around us,
Yeah.
headed into GFL's plant. How feasible would it be at 27 cents a gallon, because that's what they charge, to build another cell for you? I know you can't put it into your system, and Nanaimo, when I went there, the NRD, they explained that it can't because of the dead bugs, the new bugs or whatever. I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly what
Yeah.
they said. So you can't currently treat that effluent, but you could build another cell or another operation to do that. Is that possible?
I could build another cell, but then where would that sludge go? And then you would also be dealing with tons of odor issues. There's no way that the sequencing batch reactors that we have in place could process septic loads from trucks. And that also opens up the question to the funding of how the plant is funded. The plant is funded through sewer users.
Right.
So then that would be something to talk with bylaw and finance
Yeah.
about.
No, yeah, my question is more, is it feasible or is it something, because we're gonna be talking about strategic planning.
Mhm.
Is it something that actually, because it sounds to me like there's a ton of money leaving our community around them,
Mhm.
and we have an outfall permit there that could potentially use as a generating, money generating
Mhm.
project. So I just an idea.
I'm not sure how you would make money. Like, I understand, but if you want to look at it, there's only one processing facility on the South Island.
Yes.
That the whole South Island uses. The McLaughlin plant that takes all of Saanich and all the other municipalities, Victoria and stuff, cannot process at their volume. So if you were to give me septic loads at my much smaller volume, it would cause tons of environmental impacts. So I just can't, my field can't process that, like the plant can't in any way. And if we did fill another tank with it, then where would it go?
No, I'm talking about another treatment plant facility there.
There?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room left there for another
Okay.
plant. They're just kind of there's a room for one more cell and that's it. And then I enter into, since we're on ALR land, I start to enter Aspia. So I can't push over because I believe it's not Brook that goes next to us.
Okay, thank you. And then the other questions I have is, I'll wait for everybody else because I was gonna go back to the operations question.
Well, you can ask it now.
Okay,
Mhm.
so with phase 7 is the Phillips Road corridor. And I'm hoping that information can be shared with the MOTI on April the 8th. Because Councillor Bateman's also going to make a presentation on a former MOU, hopefully not make a presentation, but it should be knowledge or discussion. And I'm thinking that the Phillips Road corridor, which is planned in our development, may become redundant if that other plan could be executed, because that would eliminate that need. It's just something to think about. I just want. Anyway. Another discussion, sorry. That's it. No more questions.
Okay. Other councillors, go ahead, Councillor Lajeunesse.
I was just curious about a lot of other jurisdictions are able to predict COVID-19 levels, for example, from sewage. Do we have the technology to do that? And if not, what would the cost be to take samples and test for things like diseases, etc.?
Currently, our lab doesn't have that ability, but a lot of my lab work is outsourced to an accredited lab. So I could ask and get you that information if you would like. I'm not sure what that test would cost.
No, I'm just curious to
Yeah,
know.
because we don't have, sorry, we just don't have the equipment in place to do so.
Right, yeah.
Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, thanks. That was a very heavyweight portion of the evening with a lot of a lot of serious work here. I'll start with you, Paul, and so when I came into office here in 2018, I think we always heard 70% capacity at the current plant. And with infiltration on really wet winter days, you'd be over capacity at the current plant. What is the current capacity at the existing facility?
So
Does it move from 70 up?
okay, so there's two ways you can look at it. It's wet weather flows or dry weather flows. We'll stay with dry weather flows because that's easier to handle.
Yeah.
Our current capacity is 4.5 million liters of dry weather flows.
Okay,
that we
and that
could
would
take.
be how much percentage wise of the plant?
I'm sorry, maybe I missed the question of how much is infiltration?
No, what is the current capacity at the existing plant?
4.5 million liters.
Okay, all right. And how much of that 4.5 million is being utilized on a day-to-day basis?
It depends. Right now, we're operating at about 2 million liters per day.
Okay.
In the summer, we get kind of pushed with the population and people renting more and stuff here. We normally see about 2.8 million liters a day to 3 million in the summer. So we have capacity for more growth now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not quite rocking that because I still have that 70% of its 100% capacity was being used in 2018.
That's probably, he was talking to the wet weather flows. And if you remember earlier, I talked that we were at 11 million to 12 million the first year I was here. The plant's designed for wet weather flows at that point was 9 million. So we were exceeding the wet weather flows. And that's the importance of that is that's why that tertiary disc filter is here. Because what will happen is the sludge that we were talking about earlier at the bottom of the tanks will start to wash out with the clean effluent. So that tertiary disc filter will stop that.
Yes. Okay, I'm not getting into the weeds here. This would be a different thing I'm getting into.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the new plant will have this 1.5 million will provide for 5,500 new residents.
Yeah.
So how do you think where will we be in 20? I mean, the police, our staff sergeant said 19,000 by 2028. How do you see SOUP managing in say 2030s as we continue to grow?
Well, at this point, you'd have to think how many people are actually connected to the sewer specified area, right? So it's lower than our population of 15,000. I think we're guessing, I think it's around 10,000 people that are currently. So as they expand, we'll be good for the next 10 to 15 years before we have to put in that additional tank, unless, another COVID happens and lots of people move out here. So we should be good for at least another decade.
Fantastic. And over to our operations manager. Thank you. The 5-year road improvement program. I was curious to see that it's being put on hold until 2026 or some such. Did I see that or have I misread? Because it was introduced before my time, and there was a series of secondary and local roads that were to be improved. And I know pardon me?
The paving program?
I guess it's the paving program. I think it comes back in at $500,000 a year.
Yeah, I think that's the paving program that is being utilized with other projects.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
i.e. the connector route and charters. Okay.
Yeah, we do still have the patch and pave budget, which I think is
Yeah.
yeah.
That's different to the 5-year road improvement program, which did have a quite clear menu of improvements, including, I've been asked to ask this, but a Whiff and Spit Road individual who's seeking sidewalks and improvements. And that, I think, was in the 5-year plan. Anyway, our focus is on the connector route at this point in time. And we'll get to local roads in future.
Yeah, and if there's areas of concerns, then they can contact engineering and we'll do the patch.
I'm sure they already have.
See if it fits in the patch and pave.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, on the patch and pave, the 2 or 3 years ago, the Grant Road was paved from Burwood to Gatewood. And the section, there's a short section just to the east of Gatewood that breaks up continuously and is needing to be patched all the time. So I'm just curious if there is a plan or what the timelines are for maybe completing that. It's just a short section of a couple 100 meters or so.
100 meters.
I think that's a takeaway that we can come back to. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for the presentations. I actually drove up Charters today just to see what was going on. So could see that you know, it's very gravelly now. So the work is actually underway on Charters. And then and then sort of can see really the roundabout coming to life on Throop Road there as well. So thank you very much for that. And I think a big part is just, you know, sometimes if we jump around, then nothing gets done. But when we stay the course and, you know, this and this and this, then we see things planned for, designed, constructed, completed, and then we can incrementally move through the network. So thank you very much for all of that. And Ella Road is really that's an interesting road to drive. It's just seemingly the roots are failing underneath and it keeps buckling, which I guess is good for traffic calming in some regard. In terms of the wastewater pieces, at one time I was talking to a former staff sergeant where he had indicated that it would be interesting to see, at this time, the focus was really around the world of crystal meth and home labs and dumping of chemicals into our wastewater lines. Is that something that's trackable at the plant if you receive like an influx of certain chemicals coming down the line?
I'd have to look for it and testing it with the composite samplers that we just purchased. Yeah, I could provide them with that data if needed.
Okay, that's great. The other one, just on the biosolids. There was an update today at the CRD board. So every month we're receiving monthly biosolid updates because it is a matter that the regional board is dealing with. The biosolids are currently being landfilled. They are to go over to the Lafarge cement kiln or up into Cassidy mine. That's been paused in terms of Cassidy. And then it's still unfortunate landfilling but that equipment is scheduled to come online soon, I hope, so that things can move. There is also long range planning underway. So we're expected to provide something, or the board is expected to provide something by June, but there is a report available online and some ongoing work there. The question I have there then is, would our biosolids, like should all that CRD work happen, is our biosolid of that class where it can then join in and go to the cement kiln, or is it not meeting that? I don't know if it's class A standard.
It's a dryness standard they're looking for. So how dry is the sludge that we're sending out? And we can meet it with the centrifuge that we had put in 2020. That was one of the reasons that we had put that in it, so that we can meet that dryness. So we will be able to go, and we're first in line apparently, so.
Oh, that's great. And the centrifuge is what spins out the water.
Yeah, it's what separates the solids from the liquids in the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one time, as I was seemingly had nothing better to do with my time, I was Googling things on YouTube and there was an inspection of our outflow.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was done every 5 or 10 years or something, but I was it was interesting to see the the marine life
Yeah.
and the activity that occurs there. Is that something that's on the docket to do sooner?
I do that yearly. Yes,
Oh,
I do it in
yearly.
the fall every year.
Okay,
So, and yeah, the sea life is doing very well. We look for fecal coliform units in those testing, and we operate. So to give you an idea, we would need to be compliant in the water. We would need to be below 14 coliform 40 units per 100 milliliters, and right now we operate at 0. So we are very clean coming out of the plant.
okay, that may be something just to, maybe not like the whole thing, but just to say, you know, like if there's some way of, I'm always looking for the educational piece. So if there's some way just to share with residents, you know, here's the things that even though they're marketed as flushable, you really don't want to flush them. Because and I don't think people want the visual about what that looks like at the plant, but just that these are, you know, maybe that's, I don't know, but just to say that we can all work together to extend the life of our treatment plants. You know, in terms of the pruning or tree planting, you could have like how to properly plunge,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then also just showcasing that all of this environmental stewardship work that the district is leading on is like, look at how the marine bed is really coming to life. Because in some areas around the CRD, all I hear is how dead their water is and how, and all of that. So it's a real thing. Like, and then I found an old site about how there were concerns back in the day about how this would impact our marine environment, but it's a very positive story to share that after all this time, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this area come back to life.
Yeah, and that's something I can work with Christina and create an education program on the district website for flushables and stuff like that, and provide I can provide reports as well for the effluent testing out of our outfall if you'd like that on the site.
That's great. A rock con, yeah, it is fascinating. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just one comment I'd like to make. In September last year, I had a situation where I was bunged up. Or my sewer line was where it connected to the main. And Mr. Bohemier was able to repair it within a day, which was phenomenal. It was 16 feet below grade where the break was, and I just wanted to thank you for that. And yeah, unlike the remediation work, which is still not completed 6 months later.
I'll look into that. So, but you're welcome.
Thank you very much. And as again, to those viewing online, thank you for bearing with us. There are no members of the public present in the galleries. We'll continue to the next presentation.
Okay, just want to do a quick check-in for time here. Just let you know, we did all of the fun departments first, so now it's kind of a little bit of the drier presentation. We'll move quite quickly through these departments. They're not fun. We don't have a lot of capital asks. So I will be presenting on administrative services, corporate services and bylaw, and the planning and building development services departments. Ryan will be presenting on GIS and IT, and Ben will just wrap it up quickly just with a finance cover. So I think we can move through the rest of these pretty quickly here, you'll see. But I will start ahead. So administrative services. Administrative services, and to confirm, these PowerPoints will be shared publicly. We're finalizing them all today, so we will definitely share all of these if we move too quickly through the slides. We have 3 staff within administrative services: the chief administrative officer, human resources, and communications, who offer an umbrella of services both internally and externally for the organization. So on the corporate services and bylaw section, corporate services represents both legislative services and bylaw, and there's 7 staff included that in the department, which is a director, Ms. Bagnall, just started. Next year, she will be doing this presentation for you. So a deputy director of corporate services is currently vacant and posted. So anticipating hopefully filling that vacancy shortly. We have 2 corporate services assistants. One is currently vacant. That competition is closed, and we're in the screening and shortlisting process of that competition. We currently have 2 bylaw officers. One is on medical leave, And we have a funding ask for auxiliary bylaw to bring on additional auxiliary bylaw resources. I'll touch on that in a couple slides here. And as well a records management clerk under that department. For the council and administrative services departments, administrative services includes council. It represents approximately 11% of the budget for a total of 1.67 million. Some of the details of these service areas are a $36,000 increase in community service agreements. Mr. Curry touched on that in the presentation, I believe, at the end of February there, just talking about the CPI increases in those agreements. So we have just under $340,000 dedicated to community service agreements and other community funding initiatives. They are, and additionally, on top of that, there's 65,000 still allocated in the community grants program. And climate action initiatives are also included in this portion of the budget. And with the climate action year-end report provided to council last month, staff recommended maintaining the same financial contribution. And for 2024, staff are looking to support initiatives that remove barriers to safely walking and rolling around town, as highlighted as a top priority from the community. And these efforts will see crosswalk improvements and solar-powered speed reader boards, et cetera, installed throughout the community. Staff are also looking to continue the community seed fund program and leverage the remaining portion to assist with district grant applications. Okay, there's our lovely bylaw officer, Mr. Cullum, on his e-bike that was purchased a couple budgets ago now. It's great. Looking forward to that coming out with the nicer weather. So corporate services includes legislative and bylaw services. They represent approximately 4.2% of our budget for approximately just under $900,000. The specific service levels for 2024 budget include, as I mentioned, the increase funding for bylaw services of approximately $40,000 this year. For the next slide, we'll provide some more information or pause on this more at the open house, but just wanted to touch on the demand for bylaw services specifically. We're seeing an increase in call volumes, and as our population grows, this is obviously something that is expected. Overall for 2023, bylaw services is also responsible for processing almost 800 business licenses each year. We currently have 2 officers that fill a 7-day-a-week schedule and limited opportunities for coverage in the event of vacations or medical leaves, which is another reason for the ask for the auxiliary bylaw money. On the trends, and the theme, as I've heard from some members of council, is we want to have some more stats and reporting on what these calls for services are like, whether they're RCMP, fire, parks, bylaw is another one. So we are working on, having more detailed and specific stats and specific numbers so that we can give council and the community just an update on where we're seeing the pressures come. So the emergency trends we're seeing is activity within our parks and enforcement of the Supreme Court ruling pertaining to those sheltering overnight. So as of note for 2023, Parks has teased out this as a call type so that we can better understand the resource allocation. So in 2022, everything was kind of grouped under public property and general, which accounted for approximately 58 calls. And by comparison, when we've have this separate stat, we are up to 104 calls in 2023. Leave that there. Calls for service. This is just a stat or a slide showing some of the other calls for service. As you can see, parking is one of the most common topics of concern, receiving 200 complaints last year alone. It's important to note that this is a specific area of concern, does not just impact one service area, but also commonly involves engineering to adequately resolve the complaint. For example, if signing no parking is warranted, it might impact on street parking elsewhere. Simply put, in solving one problem, we don't want to create another. And as we heard from those responding to the budget survey, community planning is a priority area for residents, and parking specifically was mentioned to staff conducting engagement. And so to respond and deliver in the service area, it's an important element for us to keep in mind as subdivision standards bylaw is brought forward later this year. While there may be opportunities to better plan for the future development, it doesn't negate that within existing developments, there's considerable demand on bylaw services to respond to parking complaints and for bylaw to work with engineering to examine potential solutions. So this will always be an ongoing initiative for us. And that is the end of admin and corporate services. I can pause if there's any questions, or I can just do planning and we can do all the questions at the end.
Anything? We're good. We'll keep rolling.
Planning will be short and sweet. So onto the planning, building and development services department. Currently in that department, we have 6 full-time staff in this area, including a manager of community planning, 2 planners, senior planning tech. We have 1 building inspector, 1 community economic development officer, who is supported by 1 administrative clerk, and as well, we have auxiliary chief building official. We are currently recruiting and in the final stages of potentially hiring another auxiliary building official 1. The service area highlight is that at this time, we continue to have availability for building inspections. So we worked really hard to get that caught up over the last few months here. So always are encouraging people to call if they want an inspection. They should be able to get it in short order. A key priority for this service area, in addition to processing application, is preparing a regional tourism strategy, which is the work of our community economic development officer, and completing building inspections is the next steps associated with the numerous legislative changes. This is just a snapshot of the planning department and kind of a synopsis, summary of the revenue that they bring in. The funding for this service is predominantly recovered through the fees we charge. However, in the context of the overall budget, this service area represents approximately 9% of the total budget. Next, I just wanted to touch on the housing capacity funding program. That is the $223,000 we received from the province to help implement the housing legislation changes. So the new provincial legislations had a significant impact on this service area, in particular for 2024 and 2025. To assist with meeting deliverables outlined by the province, the BC government established the Housing Capital Funding Program. Through this program, the district received $223,000, and the eligibility for this fund can be spent on any planning and implementation activities local governments will need to undertake to successfully meet the legislative requirements of Bill 44, Housing Statutes Amendment Act, Bill 47, Housing Statutes Transit Orientated Areas Amendment Act, and to update or adopt tools from Bill 46, the Housing Statutes Development Financing Amendment Act. For 2024, staff have currently identified some of the uses of this fund to complete a housing needs assessment and update the zoning bylaw, which is due by June 30th, 2024. We are definitely anticipating additional costs with engineering studies, OCP, and potentially other unknown costs once we get through this, those first few initiatives. Obviously, as we progress through this, a housing needs assessment is just a guesstimate of that amount. And the other reports, as we know more about this program, this is going to be a hot topic for council throughout the year. There's going to be lots of presentations from the planning or other departments or potentially consultants if it's a bigger initiative we're undertaking here. So more to come on this throughout the year. And I think that's it for planning. And so I will pause there if there's any specific questions. IT and GIS is next.
Councillor St. Pierre.
You made a brief mention of cycling, and I was curious as to whether or not that might include some sort of a strategy or report. I know that Councillor Jeunesse has mentioned that as he's booting around town, he's noting accessibility issues and pinch points and bottlenecks in terms of safe cycling. Seems like we could actually use some sort of a more fulsome report to actually bolster the TMP in terms of actually helping our cycling routes. So I'm curious as to whether or not that might be included and whether or not we have anything available in the budget for that. Whoa.
Thanks for that question. I think the shorter answer to that is yes. And my vision from a communication perspective is to look at our transportation network as a whole, which means road systems and trails overlaid. So I'm working on that with GIS right now. So that will help inform the next steps rolling out from that.
Thank you very much.
Other council members, Councillor Bateman.
Well, I just have a comment, and it's a process point. And, you know, we received an agenda tonight that was all of 7 pages. Okay, and you've just given us a really substantial report, and I can't grok it. It's just too much this hour. So perhaps next year, when we do this service review, and I know we're getting quarterly reports all along the way, which is fantastic. And yet at this moment in time, it would be great to see a more substantial agenda with talking points from the departments. And that takes up a lot of time. And I know that you don't have a lot to spare, but, and I'm sure these slide decks will be shared. Ben's yours from the other week as well with council so that we can really absorb this material. Thanks.
Appreciate the feedback and yeah, we're definitely aware of that. It's just a lot of moving pieces right now. So definitely that's something we aim to improve on every year for sure. Yeah.
Counselor Beddoes?
Yeah, just to expand on that, I've noticed a great improvement with the reporting from staff, stats over the last couple of years and communications especially. There's a lot more information out there to the public, and I'm getting asked less questions because people can find the answers on our website. The only question I have is on the Bill 44, you say we were given 223,000 and some change to help us work through this stuff. Is that adequate?
No.
I
I'm
just
sorry.
want to
I'm
get that.
hearing late. No,
Are
I'm
we
sure.
planning to go for more, asking for grants to do this?
Yeah, I think once staff have had a chance to just absorb some of this, we don't even know what some of the legislation is yet. They haven't released all of the guidance documents to all of this. So it's the infancy stage of this, but absolutely we are anticipating once we get a chance to regroup and confirm what this is, that there'll be more asks because the OCP alone, you know, could eat up, could have potentially eaten up all of that money. So definitely once we have some more information, we'll make sure council's aware of that and help with advocacy.
Sounds
or
like you're on it. I
grants.
appreciate it.
We're on it. It's coming.
Thank you.
Councilor St. Pierre?
Sorry, on the planning front and all the changes that the province are asking for, that was something hot topic, obviously, at the Housing Summit. And one of the things that the Planning Institute people were saying was that there simply aren't enough planners. There's going to be a bottleneck in terms of planners because there just aren't enough professionals with the skills to actually do this work in time, from what I can tell. Now, the only thing that comes to mind, and they've got a peer system that can potentially help out and so on and so forth, but that's going to be a bit of a band-aid as far as I'm concerned. Do we know whether or not the provinces can actually work on things like maybe helping to introduce AI? I know that they've actually put money through UBCM towards helping relieve some of the pressure on planning departments on some pieces of work. Do we have something substantive that might actually really provide a solution to this bottleneck? Because a lot of this is going to be donkey work doing the same thing over for every single local government. They should be able to actually use this as something to actually help us out. Do we have anything on that?
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Ms. Begno, who's aware of this. I think she's going to discuss the Kelowna AI. Dana, listen.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, my understanding is the city of Kelowna received substantial grants to work directly with Microsoft to develop in-house AI tools for a number of functions. And a condition of those grants were to make it open source to other local governments to implement. So we are aware of this, and the intention is to reach out to the city of Kelowna to have a better understanding of their timeline and to understand the district's position on how to implement them to best suit our capacity needs and to work with departments for their functions in order to not duplicate their work in AI and to use the modules that they're creating directly with Microsoft.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, on that, I attended a session at UBCM last year where Kelowna presented. They had their AI person, their CAO, and the head guy from Microsoft. And they said that they want to get everyone on board as soon as possible, and they encouraged our IT department to reach out to their IT department and get filled in. I don't know if you've done that yet, but yeah, definitely worth doing.
Thank you. Just one last thing to throw out there for fun, touching on Councillor St. Pierre's piece around cycling is Go By Bike Week is celebrating its 30 year in the region. And then I thought that might motivate me to actually get my bike out. So I'm sort of involved. And so just something fun for staff to think about is the go by bike to work challenge. And then, what is the behavior you want to see out in the community? And so just something fun to see if that's plausible or not. Leave it at that. Yes.
To the local government climate action program, which is a 3-year program. Are we into year 2 or are we now in year 3? It's year 2 of programs, but the money, is that guaranteed next year as well?
I believe it's partial in 2025, but I will have to confirm and circle back on that one with the specific dates of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move along.
Evening, guys. Ryan Reinch, IT manager, responsible for IT and GIS. Today's topics are to talk about the service area, what we do, our 2024 key deliverables, and a couple items on budget. So our staffing is we have four full-time staff, manager of IT, myself, and we have a head of GIS, GIS lands and records analyst, and a technical support analyst. Myself, I oversee both IT and GIS, as well as I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of IT and making sure everybody can still use their computers and email. Our technology support analyst is responsible for supporting all the end users, along with maintaining our IT infrastructure. Our amazing head of GIS oversees the GIS division, as well as in charge of planning and maintaining and supporting our GIS applications. The GIS lands record analyst is responsible for creating, editing, and maintaining data in the spatial databases, as long as in maintaining land property information within Tempest, which she's been very busy. Key deliverables this for 2024 is to continue to provide exceptional IT support, as well as GIS support for all our staff and council. We currently receive about 2,500 calls a year. That includes help desk tickets and walk-ups. So we stay pretty busy. I know our CAO, our Rachel, our intern CAO, keeps us busy with walk-ups. So continue to strengthen our security posture and keep our systems and users safe. I just attended a conference in Vancouver last week, all about cybersecurity. And currently, the cybersecurity industry is so understaffed. There's 10,000 open positions in cybersecurity right now. Incredible. So if you guys have any, young staff or people want a career change, that's the right career to get into right now. And especially with AI coming, and it's a big topic right now. So the sophisticated attacks now through AI are incredible. So a lot of these organizations have full-time staff, cybersecurity staff, just watching this, and it's up to myself and Michael just to keep the district safe. And I know the mayor keeps us busy with some emails coming in. Some of them are impossible to tell that they're scams or phishing attempts. So I just always, everybody be alert and take everything with a grain of salt. It's a dangerous world out there. And just give you a couple stats. We probably get people trying to attack our firewall daily over 150,000 times a day, just people trying to penetrate our firewall. So we have to make sure that's always kept up to date. Also, we're going to replace our aging servers. I don't know if anybody's walked around our server room lately. If the fans are blowing loud, we have alarms beeping. So we have some aging servers that we're currently going to be replacing this year. We want to improve our technology for our council meetings and allow a more seamless experience for staff in the council chambers, as well as the public seeing these live streaming events. Just make it a little bit better for them. Create a disaster recovery plan, which will be housing some servers in the wastewater treatment plant. So in case there's an emergency at City Hall, we can fail over to servers at wastewater treatment plant and keep everything online for our staff. For GIS portion of it, we're going to create a new Suit Parks Finder map, an integrated map for the public to be able to see all our wonderful parks and be able to get there and see all the amenities our parks have. There's a big push right now to get everything ready for NG 911. So our head of GIS is working very hard, getting all our data up to date and getting ready for that to come in line. And that's supposed to be, they want all the data ready for 2025, but want to be online in 2027. And then again, continue exceptional GIS support for everyone's mapping needs, and they get a lot of requests to create some fancy maps. So they're doing a great job. Just want to talk with budgetary note. Our budget pretty much is the same, but we are experiencing higher software licensing costs. A lot of the companies we use are going to a subscription-based model, where we used to be able to own our licenses. Now we're basically renting our licenses year to year. So that's increasing costs, and along with inflation, all those costs are rising. So we'll just keep on plugging away and doing our best to reduce costs in our area, but those costs are continuing to go up. So we have to fight those costs. And also just speaking on the Kelowna AI projects, it's been a big topic with all the IT managers in the Lower Main or in the South Island. We've all downloaded their open source, and it's pretty interesting stuff, but the amount of budget Souk would need to even implement that is out of this world. So AI is great technology, but because Microsoft, like we're using Microsoft technology or Microsoft servers, they charge a lot of money for us to use their servers. So it's all in theory, it's good. It's going to help a lot of people, but it also costs a lot of money to run. So that's just want to make a side note of that as well. So AI is great, but it costs money. And that's it. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
No, I really appreciate your response to things, because what's happening now in some cases is sadly some of our local government peers are being infected. So then I'm receiving emails from known people, and it's in their system. And then I'll get another one from maybe a staff member. They're like, don't open anything from so-and-so. So now sometimes I wait a bit, and then just very suspicious of anything attachment or click on this link. But it does, sometimes it gets confusing. And then sometimes mayors will sign on to a letter together, a joint advocacy letter, and then that gets infected as it goes around. So sometimes just mailing it out and signing it is the best way to go for these things. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And it's just important to highlight that what looks easy it's like our wastewater system. There's things that are above ground, but that you see, but all this heavy lifting happens underground, and it's invisible to us. So thank you for that work. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, just looking at this last slide, it looks like you need a spell check on PowerPoint, but finance. No, I was just with GIS and mapping of the parks. I think this would be a good opportunity for Camosun's computer tech students to do a capstone project, which they do every year, to create an app for navigating the park system. I think that would be really useful, and it would be free.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, the current project that where the GIS is working on it's pretty interactive. So Mitch has some really cool tools, but I will look into the capstone project.
Yeah, the smartphone app would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving along.
Okay, over to finance. This slide, the heading on mine is correct, so I don't know where that got changed over. Okay, I'm gonna move pretty quick and can answer any questions at the end. I'm gonna just talk about service area overview for finance, and then some budget notes, and then look at some key deliverables that we're planning to do for 2024. So finance includes 7 full-time staff and 2 auxiliary staff. It's a director of finance, a deputy director, accounting tech that processes accounts payable, and accounting tech that does payroll and other financial support, year-end support, account analysis, account reconciliations, that kind of stuff. We have 3 general support clerks that work at the front and 1 auxiliary support clerk. And just recently we have a auxiliary senior financial advisor, and she's on in a part-time capacity has done the same position that I do for North Saanich, and then is I'd consider her like our secret accounting operative who does accounting assignments for us and keeps things moving along in the background. So she's been a lot of help just with supporting me with year end this year, so that when I'm doing some other things, the day-to-day and budget, that someone's still progressing our year end for the auditors who'll be here in 2 weeks. So finance, we do the financial reporting, collect the property taxes and accounts receivable, general accounting and grant support, budget, accounts payable and payroll, and then the IT and GIS also fall under the umbrella for the Director of Finance. Some quick notes for 2024. There's a $5,000 increase for property insurance, a $10,000 increase for software licensing fees. The 20,000 increase for procurement has been reduced to 10,000, and the 20,000 increase for auxiliary general support clerk has also been reduced to 10,000 in the presented budget that is before you today. The 2025 to 2028 finance budget includes a new QP position. So we're requesting a new position in 2025. It was talked about for 2024, and we just delayed it just due to funding constraints. Some key deliverables for 2024. The budget 2024 is one of our first priorities right now. The community grants are coming up shortly. So the deadline for community grants is on Friday, this week on the 15th. The final audit, the auditors will be here in the first week of April. We're going to do some procurement training for the organization and potentially with council as well. Climate reporting, payroll software research. We just want to look at our options for payroll software. Credit card policy update, fees and charges review. We've done one review already. We're going to do another one later this year. Procurement policy review, financial software enhancements, staff training, cash flow tracking. And for capital, we'd like to move our capital plan from a 5-year to a 10-year. Asset management and grant management. So we, although we don't have any direct capital requests, we are still tied to every capital project, whether it's managing the grant administration, the finance side of things, or just for processing AP. So when we have a year where we're doing $18 to $20 million in capital, that increases the service demand from finance, because there's a lot more processing on our end. So that concludes my finance portion of the service review. Is there any questions on finance operations?
Seemed pretty straightforward. So Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just the procurement training that may include council. Does that also include local contractors?
It could, if there is a desire to bring local contractors in. I've done that before. When you want to do some education to help some of your local contractors understand the bidding process and new requirements, absolutely it could.
Yeah, I think that would be worth doing.
Okay, we'll see. More information on that will come. Councillor Bateman?
I'll just comment that the highlight there for me was that 10-year capital plan. So that is quite a game changer for how the district looks at its extended capital funding. That's a statement. Can you?
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, I think it's in the council priorities that the CEO had outlined, I think in November or December. And I think it's what we're striving to work towards. So with this 5-year capital plan, we went into greater depth and sitting with everyone and spending the time to think about what the 5-year outlook was, and then also applying the funding to it to see how that looks. You can see in the columns, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, the columns where they're funded by grant or by debt, we're in a position where we're going to have to wait for something to come along or make the plan to borrow and include that in the tax rate. So the 10-year outlook would give council the option to just include that with your priorities and what you want to accomplish in 10 years for the community.
Okay. Thank you. Moving along.
Okay, I have just a conclusion to kind of wrap everything up here. I had intended to mention this earlier in my first presentation. Since our February 28th meeting, we've received 2 email inquiries related to the budget. One resident requested that we decrease our bylaw services, and the other requested that we allocate $3 million from the Emmanuel Creek Crossing project to bike lanes and sidewalks. So those were the 2 inquiries that we received, and we haven't heard a whole lot else. I answered a few questions from a local reporter, and we've just been keeping an eye on news releases, and most of them all seem to have a positive vibe to how the press was received for the tax increase proposed.
Thank you very much. I would recommend staying the course on the bylaw piece. And then in terms of the correspondence, I recognize that there's been a big investment into the lands located in Sun River. That's been, the Sport Box was initiated back in 2011. Is the first time the district pursued a grant at that time. And as we know, as we grow, our recreation services and demands continue to grow. There's also a need to not only that Little River connection is always about reconciliation. And I feel immersing our children into our wild places. When we proceeded with the Canes Park staircase, for example, is heavily used by Souk Elementary. The students can all access it. The teachers use the platform for outdoor teaching opportunities, and it connects Souk Elementary children with the water, and there's a tremendous learning opportunity that occurs there. Similarly, moving school-age children from Sun River to Journey Middle School is a big priority. It encourages the use of walking instead of using the bus, which is oversubscribed and busy as it is. And also will enable Journey Middle School to access programming opportunities in the Sport Box as well, and also provide an outdoor educational component, which I think is very important for the next generation that will be caring for all of this. I did encounter a resident one time out there, and he was not in favor of it, and he was saying like, see, nobody's using it right now. I don't see any children there. And I commented that that was probably a good thing because it was Thursday at 10 and they were likely in school, so they wouldn't be accessing the Sport Box. But in the winter season, when it snowed, I saw young people bringing in their shovels, clearing areas, and so they could practice goaltending and the like. On weekends or after school, I continually see young people of all ages practicing skills together and using the amenity. It's like our ice rink at Sea Park. It's not often used during the day because the particular demographic is in the schools or attending some form of school. So nothing's cheap these days, but I think it's just important to carry on with the livability of our community. So thank you. I just wanted to add to that. And also the grants we received and hopefully will receive are specific to that project. So the downside of not using a grant and returning it is in the future, it'll put you at the bottom of the pile when we really need to apply for grants. And we want to demonstrate that we're advocating for grants, we're receiving them, we're grateful, we're doing these projects, and please keep this going, because the only way we can accomplish all of this together is if everyone is working together to fund the necessary amenities. So this has been a long evening. I appreciate that for everyone and to all of you here. And I know you'll be back in the office tomorrow morning. So thank you for all of this. And I appreciate it as well. I was in a CRD budget board meeting all day too and got straight here. So it's just the reality of meeting timelines. And I think going forward, we get into a cycle where we complete 1 year, we start the service planning, and then it rolls more efficiently. And I just appreciated the opportunity to get back up to speed with the work that we're doing, because it gets a bit crowded in the Mind Palace and I can't remember everything. So it's in there somewhere floating around. Anyway, okay, so Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I was gonna get a report on the council's 5-year.
No, there wasn't any, sorry.
No, go.
We didn't specifically highlight it because there isn't really any material changes to the budget.
No.
It's more of a status quo budget other
Right.
than the community service agreement lift.
Yeah.
So, knowing that this was going to be a heavy night, I didn't get in deep dive into that, but I can do that in maybe the next quarterly update.
Yeah.
Highlight that more.
Yeah, I think it's worth letting the public know that we at this table are getting a CPI increase for this year.
Correct.
And that the counselor's salary has now risen to 22,260.64. And the mayor is now being paid $52,630.07. And I say that at the end of a 3.25-hour meeting so far. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. It was 20,000 when I started.
That's right.
Yes.
10,000 for the rest of us.
Yes. Okay. So here we are. So, okay. So suite of, okay. So the first one would be that the committee received the draft 2024 to 2028 financial plan service level review and capital budget report and presentations for information. So that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre. No seconders required. We're receiving it for information, so you've received it. I don't think there's much to debate, but all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. The other piece would be here on then putting in the, we had somewhere in here, so I'll just read something, and that would be that the committee of the whole recommend that council direct staff to bring forward the 2024 to 2028 5-year financial plan bylaw for 3 readings with a general municipal tax increase of 11.48%. Was that was there were 2 options. I'm just trying to fill in a blank here. So now we can just, it's not moved. I'm not moving it. I'm just reading it out. So does someone want to move that?
I'll move it for discussion.
Yeah, it's just to get something on the floor for discussion. So that's been moved now, no seconder required. So go ahead. Yep.
Yeah.
Oops.
Won't get my chainsaw back again. Yeah, our choices are 9.98 versus 11.48. And if we go for 9.98, it looks really good, but we're bumping a bunch of things over till next year, which is troublesome for me. 11.48, it looks like that's what they've trimmed it down to, which won't, well, I guess everything will pack next year, but more of a realistic number. So I'm a little troubled. I'm not quite clear myself, but I brought that. Those were 2 options. I'd like to hear what other councillors have to say.
So a question that I have was on that earlier conversation of moving with the COVID reserve for the policing. Does that change that? That's the part I don't.
To the chair, it depends. You could use the amount for the 9.98 would have been 225,000 in police reserves. So if you wanted to use all of the COVID restart funds from that amount, it would decrease the from the 11.48. So you could choose both. So you could fund the 125, which is in the 11.248. You could choose to fund that from the COVID restart, and that way you're still holding the police fund for a rainy day, or you could choose to do it on the smaller request as well. So it could be used on either side or on either choice that you like. Sorry if that's not clear. It's getting late.
Councillor Pearson?
I kind of I'm following your math and it would it be fair that we could have a blended rate somewhere between 998 and 11.48 using that COVID relief fund to offset the police? That's kind of what my question was originally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just do the math here quickly.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, If you move the 100,000 from the police reserve to the COVID reserve, like we could still keep the rate at 9.98. However, that doesn't add back the other amount. So if you wanted me to also add back the 60,000 at the same time. Okay. The rate would then be 10.53.
Okay, so I'm looking for amendment. No, this is moved. It just needs one mover just to, oops, kick. Oh. Yes, go ahead, please.
I'd like to.
In the microphone.
Okay, I'd like to make amendment that we fill in that blank with 10.53% as recommended by our finance.
Okay.
Friendly amendment, I
The-
can change.
The amendment, so it would be an amendment then to, it was 11.48 was the original one. So the amendment would be to replace 11.48 with 10.53. And then that keeps everything whole. The police reserve is whole, everything's whole. Okay, so that's moved. Including the CPI and basically everything's there. I think it's important to me that that police reserve remain full. Yes,
Just
just getting clarity.
Just for clarity, the police reserve would still have 125,000 funded, and I've moved 100,000 to the COVID reserve, which is still offsetting the police increase. So it's originally the police reserve to obtain the 9.98% was 225,000 funds required, and now it's 125 with 100,000 being moved over to the COVID reserve.
Well, I was thinking like COVID reserve should go to police reserve.
Yes, it's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just a different way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just to want to clarify, you would like us to not use any police reserve funding this year and use COVID reserves instead to get the same
Yes.
impact? Perfect, we can do that.
Okay, and then that
Okay.
puts it at the 10.53.
Correct.
Okay, so calling the question on the amendment of the 10.53. All those in favor, please. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Yeah. And now on the main amended motion. I'll call, Yes, sorry. All those in favor, please. And that none opposed, so that also carries unanimously. Okay. And so next then we need to wind our way out of the committee of the whole, right? So. Yeah. So the motion would be that the committee of the whole rise and reports.
Pardon me, the motion would be that the council resolve into the special meeting. We're now coming out of committee, entering back into a special meeting so that we can ratify the recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, I was just reading what was on the screen, so. That's okay, so. So that the committee of the whole resolve back into special council.
That's correct.
Okay, so moved by Councillor St. Pierre. We don't need a seconder. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. So now we are sitting back as council and we would require seconder. And so that would be a motion to close the meeting to the public.
Oh,
No, sorry. Okay, so that would be to deal with the committee of the whole recommendations. So then that would be that council received the draft 2024 to 2028 financial plan service level review and capital budget report and presentations for information. And that council directs staff to bring forward the 2024 to 2028 5-year financial plan bylaw for 3 readings with a general municipal tax increase of 10.53%. Okay, so this I require a mover by Councillor, I heard you first, Pearson, and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. No, anything from anyone? No.
I think we beat that one.
All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. Okay, thank you. And now we would look for a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter. It's 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably expect it to harm the interests of the municipality. So that's moved by Counselor St. Pierre and seconded by Counselor Bateman. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, so at this point, I would suggest that council remain here. And that staff, aside from our corporate officer and interim CAO, I don't know, whoever you deem should remain here would remain. And to the member of the public that's joined us, thank you for joining us at this late hour, but we will need to ask you to wait in the parking lot. Well, I can.